Welcome to All In with Evan Jarvis, the poker podcast where we go all in with poker champions past, present, and future. Hey there, friend. Welcome to All In with Evan Jarvis. In today's episode, my guest is Alex Fitzgerald, known online as Assassinato. Alex is one of the hardest working players in the game. You may not have heard of him, but this is one dedicated poker player, student, and coach. As I mentioned, insane work ethic is an understatement. In terms of results, Alex has over $600,000 in live tournament winnings. He also has over $3.3 million in online tournament winnings under the handle Assassinato. Alex has worked for multiple training sites, including Pocket Fives Training and cardrunners.com, where he currently creates new educational content. For those who don't know, Cardrunners is the first ever poker training site, first ever online poker training site. They were the home of cash game training, while Poker X Factor was the original tournament site. But this podcast isn't about poker training sites. It's about poker playing people. And Alex has a lot more to his resume than just that. Alex is an author of The Myth of Poker Talent, Why Anyone Can Be a Great Poker Player. He's also an author of, in my opinion, one of the very best chapters in the Excelling at No Limit Hold'em book, which was co-authored by about 15 authors, one of which was yours truly, Evan Jarvis, and the project was spearheaded by Jonathan Little, also one of the greatest minds in the kind of education side of poker, who I expect will also be having on a future episode of this podcast. Alex has also created a library of training webinars, which are some of my favorite training material, probably because in addition to having good strategy, really good analytical breakdown, tons of data to prove his points, Alex is also just absolutely hilarious. And they were a major reason behind my results in late 2015 when I was final tabling a Sunday major pretty much every weekend. And that carried over to my results in early 2016, where I got second place in the Sunday Supersonic for $33,000 and chopped the Falls View Poker Classic for $162,000. So when it comes to coaching and when it comes to advanced tournament strategy, this guy's a whiz. And if you want to know more about his content or his story, Alex's blog, it's just absurd. I feel like he must be sitting at the computer for 10 hours a day just writing straight, because he would have blog posts with like 1,000 to 10,000 words every day on his blog. And what we get into here is a very inspiring conversation because Alex, like myself, is very big into personal development. He's studied a lot of the self-help gurus over the years and has a lot of those good mentalities in him. It's also a very entertaining conversation because Alex is extremely talkative and is very opinionated and has a lot of stories and some angst and stuff in the mix. So know that Alex's conversational style can be a bit blunt at times, but I think if you really just kind of sit back, relax, and get to know this character a little more, you're going to find that he really grows on you. So this is All In with Evan Jarvis. I'm your host. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I hope you'll learn some lessons that help you boost your confidence and build your bankroll. Now, without further ado, let's get stacking. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Real pleasure to have you here, man. I'm actually really excited to have you on the show because you're someone who we've been in touch a little bit over the years, but I don't think you know just how impactful your webinars and your teaching and your breakdown of the game has been for me and the results I've got over the years. So this is partially a chance for my audience to get to know you better and probably benefit from your teachings as well, but also for me to be able to just like give you thanks for helping me get like hundreds of thousands of dollars in winnings. And like my first My first LAPT trophy was thanks to your teaching.
Oh, wow.
My first six-figure score was thanks to your teaching. So yeah, first off, like, big thank
Oh,
you.
you're sincerely welcome. I love my job because it's honest work. You get to help people achieve their dreams, and it's really nice to hear that it happened for you. That's really encouraging.
So let's talk a little bit about how long you've been in the space, because you're definitely one of the OGs for the poker space. You've been around since the inception of like Pocket Fives and sites like Poker X Factor. Just how far back into the space do you go?
Well, I turned pro at age 18, and that was in 2006. That was October 31st, 2006 was when I quit my last quote unquote real job. I was working security in downtown Seattle, quit on Halloween Day, and I haven't had a real job since. I was on Pocket Fives before that. So yeah, it was about 2006. I started playing poker tournaments, want to say 2005 on Full Tilt Poker. I was 17 years old at the time. So obviously, that's why I was never Assassinato on Full Tilt. I was the Assassinato, which I did the name as a joke, and I didn't realize as I got older would sound incredibly arrogant. But yeah, about 2006 is when I came onto the scene and went professional.
And were you in tournaments from the get-go?
I was always really attracted to tournament poker. The first thing I could beat when I started was sit and goes. I played poker tournaments. There was a guy near my house where I grew up in Bothell, Washington, and he ran 3-table, 4-table poker tournaments. And I went there from age 15 on. I was the youngest person by 10 years, and they just kicked my ass every day. And I went and played cash games at my school, and people would just kick my ass every day. In my high school, I was like 5th or 4th best at best. I always had a poker book on me. And for whatever reason, the first time I got online, my buddy loaned me $50 to play on my account there. And the first night I won a sit and go and took second in another, and had $30, and I sent it back. And that's actually been the basis of my entire poker bankroll. And I was very attracted to sit and goes because I could beat them. I wasn't really sure why, but I did well at them at the beginning. It was very, very difficult to turn that $30 into $1,000. I think it took me longer. It took me longer to go from $30 to $1,000 than it took me to go from $1,000 to $100,000, because you were learning the basics of tournament poker. But yeah, I cut my teeth in sit and goes, moved to tournaments, didn't really like the variance, and I felt I had to learn another discipline. So what I started doing was playing six max cash. I played a lot on Euro sites, never really did well on the Euro sites. The Europeans were much more aggressive. It was a much more different game. The site I did really well on was Cake Poker. I guess they're not even in the space anymore. But I learned a lot about six max cash from there, and I played that pretty exclusively for about a year. And when I did come back into tournaments, I found it was a lot easier because I had some post-flop wherewithal, whereas before I didn't. And I just kind of stayed on with tournaments from there. I'm not really sure what attracted me to them. It was just the sport of it, I guess. It's very much an endurance game, which really attracted me.
I totally agree with you that tournaments are an endurance game. And I feel like cash, as you said, is a great way to build the foundation, build the skill set to really understand what is poker. And then tournaments are almost this test of like, okay, now that you know how to play poker, can you play it for 12 hours? And can you play it as the stakes get higher and like the mistakes are not allowed anymore and it's more and more meaningful? And can you handle that pressure? I feel like that's kind of what like multi-table tournaments are.
Mm-hmm. I took it to a really brutal degree at one time. I used to pull all-nighters just to simulate jet lag, because jet lag was such a big part of the poker tournaments. It was... if you want to have a clear advantage in live poker tournaments, don't drink, don't smoke pot, eat really healthy, just like clean food, and practice sleep deprivation and just having a consistent strategy throughout it. A lot of people don't even have a game plan when they show for a poker tournament. And the time you do not want to be improvising on your musical set is Carnegie. You don't want to be winging it at the final stages. And a lot of people just don't have a strategy for those final stages, because when you play 4 or 5 hours a night in cash games, like you said, that's where you get your basis of learning. But you can do that and wing it because you're excited for the first 4 or 5 hours. And then when you get bored, you stop playing. Well, what do you do in a tournament? If you get bored and you give up, that's it. That's the game. And you have to keep that focus for so long. That's what really attracts me to it now. Is I was in decent shape when I was younger and I couldn't play tournament poker to the best of my abilities. Then I got fat and I really couldn't play tournament poker to the best of my abilities. And then it wasn't until I started lifting weights 3 or 4 times a week, eating a pescatarian diet, sleeping 8 hours a night, that I really began performing to the level that I wanted in tournament poker.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you realize the importance of this? Because you strike me as someone who's very technical, someone who's always constantly analyzing things, someone who kind of sees the big picture. So at what point were you like, oh, wow, like there's a big edge there if I can take care of my health and prepare for the last 4 hours rather than just the first 4 hours of the day?
I don't think I really grasped it till, well, actually just the past 4 months. I moved to New Jersey, and I was really lucky. One of my students put me in touch with her son, who's a personal trainer, and I just met with the guy one day and we really clicked. And it wasn't until the first 3 weeks of lifting weights were really hard getting back into that. And then it wasn't until month 2 that I started feeling like I always knew diet and exercise was really important. I always did distance running when I was on the tour at the beginning. When I was like 18 or 19, I used to literally run like 10 miles a night, 5 nights a week, and things like that. Wow. Yeah, it was stress relief essentially, and I had a lot of stress at that time, and I kept that up. I mean, I've been jogging ever since I stopped playing football, because if you still eat like a football player and you don't move around, you're going to become very fat really quickly. So I started running, and I started realizing, I've learned since this time, your body actually processes anxiety differently, neurochemically, once you do cardiovascular exercise with regularity for, I can't remember the number of weeks, but there is a line where it starts doing that. And when it became really pronounced to me was when I was playing WPT Montreal. There was one day I woke up, and every day you wake up, you get kind of dealt a new hand. Sometimes you wake up and you feel very well rested. Other days you wake up and go, oh God, it's going to be one of those days. I woke up and had one of those, oh God, it's going to be one of those days. And prior to that, if I had been at the tournament table, I would have not been able to focus at all. I would have had to have an Evernote file out, like writing things down. I couldn't, and I would have had to write down every single hand. Because I had been working out enough, it was very strange. Even though I felt really tired, it occurred to me about 6 hours into the day, I'm tracking every hand. Every hand, I know the action. I know what people raised from where, what each person did, what their facial expressions were. And I picked off, I got fortunate enough to pick off a kid with second pair, no real kicker. He triple barreled into me and shoved on me on the river, and I called off my tournament and was right. I caught him with Jack High, and it just occurred to me I would have never made that read last year because I had watched that kid the entire day. I had him timed. I knew what his face looked like when he had a hand, and his face was different that time. He was very, you have to really check when people are tense. Some people get really tense when they have a hand. They get very excited. Some people get very bored when they have a hand, and some people are actually very relaxed when they're bluffing because they're very used to the play. They've been playing for years, and then they get tense with the hand. And then obviously vice versa happens. People get very tense with the bluff and very nonchalant with the hand. And since I might play with this French-Canadian pro, again, I'm not going to say which one he was, but that really struck me. That was the moment that I said, I could do this. I could bring this to another level. And I'm still on that journey right now, but I'm really grateful to still be doing it.
And it's really interesting to me because much like myself, you were a player for a long time, and then you kind of looked at alternative avenues. You're like, oh, do I want to be an author? Do I want to be a coach? Do I want to just make training videos and do group trainings and webinars? But you came back to the table, I think it was about a year ago, and we spoke, and you're like, man, it feels so good to be back at the table. I was born to be a card player. I love being a card player. And it sounds like now you're taking all this additional knowledge and learnings that you've had over the years, and you're bringing them back to doing the thing you love most, which is playing cards.
That's very true. And don't you feel that by teaching that you become a better player? Do you ever feel like that?
I 100% feel that by teaching, I become a better player. And actually, when I really started to get heavily involved with my YouTube channel, it was to give myself accountability to do the type of studying I didn't think I would otherwise do.
Right. Exactly.
And suddenly now that other people were like counting on me, and there were other people kind of expecting stuff to happen, I had to follow through. And I made one video called Reaching Your Full Potential, where I say, you know, these are the different learning methods. And the best way to learn is to teach. And so I just carried that through. And had I not been on that project of teaching others and having to be able to explain clearly why certain things worked and certain things didn't, I could not have had the success I did. But there was also a point where when I felt I couldn't explain certain things, I had to take a step back and check myself and be like, okay, how well do I actually know the things that I am like purporting to know?
They say to write clearly is to think clearly. And I think to communicate clearly is to think clearly. And what I found, I started teaching because I went broke. I was crushing it when I was about 21. I had the EPT San Remo final table, which at the time was the biggest tournament in European history field-wise. I took the money from that. I was just on a tear. It was one of those years, if I was in a pot, I was going to win it. And I thought I was a much better poker player than I was. I started backing everybody. Good kids, but maybe not the perfect time for that. I just didn't have enough money to do it. And I spent money like crazy. And I went broke, and I deserved to. And I was really actually pretty grateful that it happened, because this was how stupid I was with my money. Wait till you hear this. But
I'm so excited.
No, I went from this. I was renting a mansion with a private beach in Costa Rica. I had a live-in maid. We had a physical therapist visit. I had an assistant. Just a lot of things you really don't need. Now, that might sound like $20,000 a month. It's not, just so it doesn't sound like I'm bragging about money. That was a lot cheaper in Costa Rica than you could realize, but it was still fairly expensive. At the same time, every Sunday, I was just so excited because like $25,000 was at play. Not realizing if you strung 8 of those sessions together where nothing really happened, I was going to be broke. But I couldn't conceive of that because at that time that I hadn't lost in a long time. And then pretty much everything that could go wrong did at the exact same time. Like there was just backup plan after backup plan. I had other avenues of profit at that time and all that stuff. And it didn't work out. And I was left with damn near nothing. And then I went from then to moving to a place called Moravia, Costa Rica. When I showed up at my apartment the first day, there was a kid dealing crack down the block, but he was paralyzed. So he was in a wheelchair. And I remember thinking, well, it can't be that bad of a neighborhood, because if he doesn't get robbed, this isn't that bad. But not realizing, hey, there's a crack dealer on your corner. And it was right next to a sanitation river. So on a really hot summer day, I could smell poop. So, and I lived in this tiny little 1-bedroom apartment, and I had to get back to work. And I started teaching just to pay my bills at that time. And what I found when I was teaching is I didn't really know the game that well. I had very good gut instincts, But I was really blessed to have these kids that had no, like the Americans weren't asking good questions anymore. The Americans were really good into this group think, which was, oh, of course you can't raise from less than 20 big blinds. That's stupid, right? And the Brazilian kids, this was the first one where I just realized I didn't really know much of anything. I said, yeah, don't raise fold from this stack. And they said, well, we have this guy named Pisagno in our country who's up $750,000 from $9 tournaments, and he doesn't believe that. And what was I supposed to say? Well, he's stupid. I'm in a one-bedroom apartment in inner city San Jose, Costa Rica. Listen to me, right? Yeah. But they said something really fair, which was prove it. And I went, okay, you little ass, right? Watch me. And I did the math, and by the time I was done, I went, this race makes perfect sense. I realized why, at the time, DJK123, Watch the Sea, Devon R12, Pisagno, those guys were raising small from short stack, Sean Deeb to a lesser extent. The reason was the bet needed to work like 45% of the time, but in the very like rejam intensive game, at the time, everybody, you mentioned Poker X Factor at the introduction, most people had learned traditional tournament poker from Johnny Bax on Poker X Factor. And Johnny Bax had a very good strategy, which was he was very good at rejamming. And the reason that was such an effective strategy at that point is most people, when they raised, they would just click the pot button. So they'd raise to 3.5x with just any two cards from the cutoff or the button. And then you would rejam 18x and they'd look down at ace jack and go, I don't know if this is a call, which means they're just giving you 3.5x 80% of the time, which means you could have any piece of crap hand the other 20% of the time, and you're essentially free rolling off your profits. Now, after everybody had seen those videos and had become a rejam intensive player, these guys had taken it one step further and realized, well, if you just min raise and the bet needs to work 44% of the time and everybody has to rejam or fold, let's say both of them rejam 20% of their hands, which is a preposterous level. So you're raising on the button, the small blind and the big blind both rejam into you with 20% of the hands. That means collectively 0.8 times 0.8, they're both rejamming into you 64% of the time. The math here isn't perfect, but work with me. Your profit is clearing a substantial amount there. And then once I started realizing that was a profitable enterprise, I started realizing how much of this game do I not know? And the answer was quite a bit. I would not be in this industry anymore if it wasn't for my students. I wouldn't be playing to the degree. Yeah, like you said, I feel like I was born to be a card player. I love to play cards. I love big pressure tournament situations. I really enjoy it. It really makes me feel alive. It sounds strange, but I don't get angry with deep finishes anymore. When I busted out of WPT Montreal 22nd or whatever it was last month, I wasn't angry. I wanted to keep playing, but it was, how many people really get to compete? How many people actually get to compete in something in their life? Whereas everybody else has to watch ESPN at night and hope that they could compete in something one day. So the fact I get to compete in something and actually get to live what I want to do makes me feel really grateful.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great comparison for life as well, that though, at some point we're all going to die. We all have to accept that.
Facts.
Same as in a tournament. At some point, you're probably going to have to get eliminated and you're going to lose your tournament life. But if you loved every moment of it and you played your best constantly, you got to apply all the things that you learned in preparation for it, you're okay with dying. Mm-hmm. You're okay with losing your tournament life because you're like, I left it all out there on the felt. And what else can I do? Mm-hmm. What more can I do except know that if I do that again over and over and over, one of those deep results is going to be first place.
That's very true. And it's not even about first place. If you get first place, that's great. It's about being able to play. The real reward is like you're saying. To me, I was telling everybody when I finished 20 seconds, like the real paycheck to me was taking the train upstate to play in Montreal, looking at the fall colors, knowing I get to go compete. I could go change my life this day. And it almost doesn't matter if it happens or not, because I'm still having the time of my life. My Canadian friend and I who is the most Canadian person I have ever met, ever. He has the accent like I could never do. It went. I'm like fifth generation Alaskan. Everybody from my family is a commercial fisherman risking their life. What chance was there for me to be in Quebec, hanging out with a random Canadian guy, going to hockey games, getting the best sub in Montreal that baseball players were getting at the same time? Like, who gets to do these things? Going to concerts, just getting to travel, see old Montreal. I never thought I would get to do any of this stuff. It's in something you said, like life, you have to like leave it all out there. I probably had a more poverty-stricken upbringing than pretty much any tournament player I know. And I wouldn't trade it for the world because all of this is still amazing to me. And that's not to say I had anything really like being poor and white in America is much different than being poor in India, right? It's not like it was that bad, but I'm really glad in retrospect I went through that because you realize there's no law that says you get to play poker. There's a lot of people that don't get to do the things that they really want to do. There's a lot of good men who had girlfriends when they were teenagers, just like I did, who got the girl pregnant and they're doing the right thing and they're working 50 hours a week to support the kid because they're good men, but that means they don't get to play cards. And if you get the chance to play cards, you got to do it. Don't do it for yourself. Do it for them. Do it for the guy who didn't have a shot, you know? And the thing I really like about teaching poker is I get to give back now. Like if I can teach that guy, if he like one day a week, he gets to feel like the champion of his little local bar league. I love those stories because you know what? Damn it, he deserves that because he's working hard and it's fun. People say, I only watch your free YouTube videos. I feel really guilty about that. And I'm like, no, I used to download EPT episodes in German because on uTorrent because that was all that was available back then. I'm glad somebody's getting something. And yeah, taking it to life. Like I don't have nearly as much money as a lot of my colleagues, and that's my fault because divorce and other bad management will do that. But I don't really care because I'm going to mess up the quote. There was Seneca said something. It was a little different than, I don't like it when people say live every day as if it could be your last, because that means an optimal world would be a zombie infestation. Because that, if you think about that, a zombie infestation means every day could be your last. Therefore, that's the optimal life, right? Seneca said something, I can't remember what it was. It was something like, you have to live in a way where if you died tomorrow, you would be content. And like, I have taken every shot I could at every opportunity. And I've been to 40 different countries. I've lived on 4 different continents. I've had a lot of different experiences. If I passed away tonight, I would be annoyed because there's a lot of things I want to do. I'd be very worried for the family I left behind. But would I personally feel cheated? No, because I've gotten to do quite a bit, and poker has facilitated a lot of that.
All In is brought to you by Grips Poker Training, where we teach you how to get stacking. Visit www.grips.com to find out more about our holistic approach, which will help you transform your game and transform your life. And if you're interested in playing online poker, visit www.grips.com/free and receive a free training bundle valued at over $200 when you create a new account at one of our partner sites. That's available at www.gripsed.com/free. So you mentioned that there was a period where you kind of had everything going on. You were living the dream life. You had the maid, you had the house on the ocean, you had the physical therapist and the assistant, which I do think are important things to have, especially as we get older. Body workers are important. Making sure we're eating well is important. But perhaps you got the dream like a little too soon to really be able to appreciate it and ensure you had the wherewithal to be able to manage it. But you also mentioned that when you humbled yourself a little bit and went to a more simple living situation where you had less distractions, less to kind of feel full of yourself per se, and you were forced to be more focused. Do you feel that poker players who come from humble beginnings overall tend to develop their game much more and have much greater results in the long term than those who are, say, born with a silver spoon in their mouth or given a big bankroll early that they don't really know how to appreciate?
That's a really good question. Well, there's two sides to it. One is having money growing up does help you quite a bit. And people don't realize to what degree it helps you. And possibly the greatest representation of that is 95% of professional poker players came from very affluent white families. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing in the NBA. And in the NBA, they always say, like, who's really likely to make it in the NBA? It's like, oh, it's some kid from the hood. That's not true. Because think about it. If you're from the hood, you're malnourished. What happens when you're malnourished? You're shorter. You're way less likely to make the NBA. And if you look it up and look at the socioeconomic status of where a lot of these players come from, they come from higher socioeconomic status. And it's different stratas. So it does help you quite a bit. Now, when it comes to staying power, that's also a degree of mental stability. If you're from a good family, maybe you won't enjoy it as much, but there might be a really good father there to talk you through the money you make and not make some of the financial decisions I made when I was younger. But the one thing I see that these guys have that the guys I see who come from worse backgrounds, the thing they have that you can't give a lot of the guys from really good families is they're hungry. When I started playing, I had a really good environment in Seattle when I did start playing bigger games, because I played with a lot of Vietnamese immigrants, and those guys never took a hand off and they never took a river off. You check to them on the river, they were taking 90 seconds with the entirety of their range. And I thought they were showboating. They were thinking. If they had second pair, because think about it, after all they had gone through to get to the United States, and you're telling them there's just free money on the table to be made, because you think about it, the easiest time to make money in no-limit hold'em tournaments is on the river. If you bet 10 big blinds into 30, 9 guys out of 10 won't even think about it. They'll just call because they want to see your hand. 10 big blinds is the exact same expectation as aces. That's dealing yourself aces with no variance. And these guys knew that. They were hungry. And they had to think about, can I really check my second pair no kicker here? What does he have, right? They wanted it more. There's a lot of guys who are just, I don't know how this happens, and I'm sure you've seen this as well. Guys like a mediocre 1-2 grinder, and then you turn on the TV 9 months later and he's playing $100K buy-in. And you're like, who is this guy's backers? And I'm thinking, people do get that good that quick. Like Doug Polk I think he got good really quick, but guys like CTS got good really, really rapidly. So it does happen. But when I play a tournament with that guy and the guy raises and he makes top pair on the river and he just checks back, my first thought is always trash, garbage. And I'm almost never wrong. The guy's almost always out of the game in 2 years, because you can't teach wanting it. When you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, you want it. You remember why you wanted it. I felt more comfortable without money than when I had money. There's a lot of responsibility. If you think about it, Bill Gates probably has a ton of stress. If he knows he has the power to save millions of lives. He literally has that power. And if he screws it up, in a way, he'd let a couple million people die. Think of how much responsibility that is, right? And having money, and if you didn't come from money, you have no idea how to manage money. And all of a sudden somebody throws a couple $100,000 in your pocket. You're 19 years old. You're going to screw it up. You're going to find a way. Yeah. I heard a rich person say one time, if you really want to kill a young man, give him $3 million when he's 20 years old. He'll be, unless he gets involved with a charity or some other project, he's going to be dead within 2 years, was what this guy said. And when I was younger, I used to laugh at that. But the more I think about it, you can't be, in the words of, I think it's Ayn Rand is how you say her name, who I normally would never quote because she was nuts, but you can't be smaller than your money. Money will very quickly expose you, and you have to gradually cultivate that up before you know what to do with it, before you know how to use it as a tool.
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the most challenging things with tournament poker. And we've seen this so many times with so many different personalities who are incredible talents, and they make all this money, and then they somehow lose the money. And you're like, what happened? Like, how did you go broke? You're a great player. I haven't seen you make any mistakes. You're like playing good games and whatnot. And it's the lifestyle. It's the other essential things that haven't been understood. Like, how do I eat without spending $500 a meal? You know, how do I pay for the kind of rent for something that's reasonable instead of being, well, like, I just want 100K, so I should live like a baller. You know, we get caught up in like, let's be like we've seen on MTV and like we've seen the rappers be, because now that we got money, that's what we do. Right. And I feel like in cash, that doesn't happen because it's slow and steady. But tournaments, it's constantly, hey, here's a windfall, here's a windfall, here's a windfall. And I've seen so many people and heard so many stories of, I made it, I lost all my money, then I understood what I was lacking that I had to learn. And then the next time I made that money, I held on to it because I actually respected it and I was actually prepared for that money.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had the moment where in college I had a 6th place finish for 20K and I'm like, man, I wanted to get first for like 160. And then I paused and I'm like, you know what, Ev, like you weren't ready to have $160,000. And when you are ready to actually handle that kind of money, the universe will give that to you.
Right. Without getting too esoteric, when I'm on my live events, I have this ritual where if I do everything according to my ritual, things will go well. I don't know if that means I'll cash the tournament or whatever, but it's, you know, I go to the same diner every morning. I go over my table draw. I do the same workout every morning. I cook myself the same breakfast. And I think it extends to life. If you want to be a better tournament poker player, you need to know how to manage your money because your money is your ammunition. And it has to extend to your life. Like you said, it will come to you. What you call the universe, I call God. I believe it. I totally believe it'll come to you when you're ready. And the worst thing that can happen to you is, it's really interesting you say that. The worst thing that could have happened to you is you would have made that 160K. Because there's a lot of guys, you were talking about the good cases, the guys who made a bunch of money, lost it all, and then won it back. For every one of those guys, I know 50 who made $100,000, $50,000, $200,000, and it's gone. And they just don't have it in them to play $20 poker tournaments now for 1.6K first prizes when that's really the slow boat to China is going to get you the money. And it's like they've warped their mind out and they don't have it anymore. They've thrown out their pitching arm. And that to me is really sad. I mean, I'm really lucky. I was very bitter for a long time, but I have no backup degree. I have nothing to fall back on. So I had to figure it out. And I'm really glad I had that because, it's like you said, the first time you don't appreciate it. And if you don't appreciate it, it's going to be, if you're mistreating your money, it's going to leave you at some point.
That could be carried over to a lot of things in life.
Everything, right?
And when you talk about it's like they warp their minds, I think that actually exposing oneself to, like, this doesn't happen in cash, but in tournaments, because you're playing $100 tournament and then at the final table, you're playing for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It literally does warp your mind, and people get like used to the feeling of being in the higher pressure, higher stakes situation, that when they have to go back to the start of the tournament or play something lower, the level of stimulation isn't there anymore. So they don't even bother. It's kind of like the drug addict who's developed a really high tolerance. So they can't do a small dose because it's completely pointless. And it's the difference between like playing for the high, playing for the rush versus playing for your life and playing as a profession.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, well, to that point, I say a lot of goofy things to my students that I have to talk with for like 20, 50 hours. But a lot of times they feel like I'm hitting this wall. What should I do? And I always say, go play video games. And they're like, what? Or like, go play bar games. Go play board games. Go play games. And remember why games are fun. Okay, I was playing. Have you ever played this like party game Mafia?
Yes.
So I was at a party. I had never played Mafia in my life. And I decide there's a party of like 30 people. I said, I'm going to figure out who is, for those of you who don't know, it's a game where you have to like identify people. It's like a process of elimination. Anyway, I wanted to win that game, and I was playing that game very seriously. I was like, now, okay, she would not kill her because they're like ride or die buddies, right? And I think this woman's been really quiet. And then I was trying to like ask accusatory questions to see how people reacted, right? And and my girlfriend was making fun of me after that. She was like, "Okay, Alex, it's a party game," and I wanted to, I didn't want to sound like Mike Ditka, but I wanted to go, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, sweetheart. But I didn't say anything because I knew I'd sound like a complete dork, like I just did. But if you want to be really good at No Limit Hold'em, you have to love games, period, right? You have to just love games, and you have to seek them out. And for the record, I did figure out who it was by the end. Not that anyone at the party thanked me for ending the game so they could continue being blasted while I was the only one drinking coffee. But
no wonder you won. You're the only sober guy.
I know.
Just like poker.
Yeah, exactly. I can't. You have to be. I have a friend who runs an orchestra, and people ask him, "How do you audition better?" He prepares people for auditions, and the thing he says is, "You have to be on all the time." If someone snaps their fingers, you have to be on. And if you can't bring up the competitive spirit over a free game of poker, if you want to learn to be a great poker player, teach 8 people who have never played poker in their lives and play for nothing. Do it for 5 hours. And if you can beat that game, you can win a WPT. If you can't beat that game, how the hell do you think you can win a WPT? When there's nothing on the line, you can't bring it. How are you going to bring it when there's $500K on the line? And also, going back, sorry, I'm just going to go off in a jag.
This is perfect. Go. Fire away.
Talking about the money, something you were saying that I really liked. Yeah, $500. How to not get a dinner for $500. My buddy, if you want to get good at poker too, hang out with people who are not poker players, because they will say some of the smartest things you have ever heard about poker. My buddy, my Canadian friend, is one of the smartest guys I've ever met, worked in a Jamaican tobacco farm. If you heard him talking, you'd think he's from a farm in Canada. And he made the point one day, he was like, if you won WPT Montreal back to back, it would not be enough money to retire off of. And I was like, that is the smartest thing anyone has ever said to me about tournament, because it's true. You win 400,000 and you win 400,000 back again. Even if you're Canadian and you don't have to pay taxes, which would be amazing, 800,000 is not enough to retire off of, most likely. You could possibly retire off of it, but if you want to have a family and investments and stuff, it's not going to be enough. Everybody has to keep working. Beyonce isn't retired. Jay-Z isn't retired. Everybody has to keep working. But these guys act like they won the game. Like, I won $100,000. It's over. I can have a $500 dinner every night, like you were saying. When really, if you want to be the champ, you probably have to cook for yourself. You have to learn how to cook something that's for your body, could work.
That's a great point, because when I first started playing tournaments, it was that idea like, oh, sweet, like I can like bink off a lottery ticket. I've got the skills for my cash games. I've put the work in. These tournaments seem a little softer than cash, so I'll hop into them and I'll just get one score and I'll be good. Mm-hmm. And I actually tried that. I hit my score for 160 and I'm like, cool, I'm good, right? because I was just so exhausted. And I'm like, wait. I need to think about my future. What do I want to do with this 160? And I'm like, okay, I need to educate myself in training, in healing arts, in coaching, in nutrition, in the things that will actually allow me to lower my cost of living while increasing my quality of life moving forward to the future. But it wasn't like, cool, I'm going to learn those skills and then I'm going to be set. I'm going to learn those skills so I can take care of myself, so I can continue working, so I can continue serving, so I can continue living out my daily purpose. Because the fast track to death and an unfulfilled life is to stop doing what you're passionate about, to stop being involved in this beautiful game that we get to be a part of. It's a joy to stay on it, like to think like, oh, I'm going to get it so I can be done. It's like, you're missing the point, buddy. You should be doing something that you wake up every day excited to do, because like you said, you're like, I'm making a difference in people's lives and I get the feedback as a result of it that makes me feel great. And like, I mean, I'm always just going after the feeling, but I'm now seeing that the feeling doesn't have to come from a rush or from a high. It can come from just doing the right thing. And from doing the right thing on a consistent basis leads to that feeling being bigger and bigger and bigger and like consistent. It's not fleeting. It is there.
How old were you when you got your 160K score and that you had all these thoughts?
So I would have been 31 at the time.
You were in the right. Do you feel, Evan, like this comes with age? Like if you were 23 and you got that score, was there any way you could have not been chasing tail every night and getting drunk and eating caviar?
Not at all. It's definitely a maturity thing. Like when I had a really fortunate summer, my first year at the series in 2008. So I would have been like 22, 23. I think it was 22. I got like 40K and I'm like, sweet, I can play 10Ks and stuff now. That didn't work out.
Right. I did the same thing. Like, I'm not trying to make fun of you.
Yeah. You just like the confidence gets kind of blown out of proportion. And then the next time I had a big score was when I had my swap with Greg Merson that came through for a similar amount, somewhere between 150 and 200. But with that, I put it all into my business.
Good.
Which, it was good. I got more reach and I got, a bigger image because of it. But I put it all in the business partially because I wanted to project this amazing image. And I'm like, if I spend more money, I can make myself look better. And I actually noticed that when I went from running the business myself to spending all this money on the business, while the business was doing better, I didn't feel the same way as I did before, because I almost felt like I was trying to cheat the system when I started spending money to build up a public image instead of just doing the image myself. And that's totally a maturity thing. Back then I got the money. I'm like, I'll give it to someone to make me look better. Now I got the money. I'm like, I'm going to invest it in myself so I can be better. So I don't need to put on makeup or clothing or polish or paint, whatever it is. I can just be who I am and my light shines bright as a result of that investment in myself. But there's no way I know this in my 20s. I'm not developed enough in my 20s. And this is the thing that comes from like 30 to 35 in most people's journey through life.
I would agree with that. I feel like a lot of these guys that are burned out on the tour, they're chasing their youth. And I always want to say, like, you're not going to be 24 again.
Wow.
That's that.
Wow. Holy shit. Like that, you got it. I was thinking about that earlier today where I was like, man, I'm thinking like, oh, I want to get like another score like the one I had. I'm like, why? I got the score. Next chapter of life. What does it look like? Move towards it. Don't live in the past.
Well, there's always, like, I hate it when they make fun of kids like in pop music, right? I always want to say they're 19 years old and they're only going to enjoy it then. Once they're 26, this isn't going to sound good to them. Or it's like, oh, don't let your kids drink Coca-Cola. And I always go, let them drink Coke, because when they're 24, it's going to taste like crap, right? And it's like, just let them have it right now at their party. Don't let them have it on a Wednesday night, but let them enjoy it right now. Mm-hmm. And that, because one day it's going to be different. That's the thing I'm recognizing now as I come up on 30. I turn 30 next month. You're not going to be 24 again. Like I'm never going to be as excited as I was in Europe in 2007 as a 19-year-old trying to make it on the EPT. That's over. That era of poker is gone. that kind of money is there. But in the same way, when I was younger, hot chocolate tasted really good. Now coffee tastes really good. There's tastes you acquire. You said something that really resonated with me. It's about the feeling. And to me, I'm doing better than I used to do. And I almost feel guilty because I do it for free. And I know you're supposed to charge for something if you do it well, as that great philosopher, the Joker and Batman said. But I was always just some loudmouth kid who drank coffee, listened to metal, yelled about a bunch of random things, and played games. That's what I was into when I was younger. That's what I was, an adrenaline junkie. And the fact I get to stay an adrenaline junkie, I still get to yell about things I really like. And I get paid just to sit around and dream up stuff is really amazing to me. And I get to compete for a living like that. That right there is the salary. That in itself is the salary. And it's very interesting to have a job. The better you become in life, the better you become as a no limit hold'em player. And I always feel like some goofy, I'm not a Zen master because a Zen master wouldn't listen to Slayer while slamming coffee. But people do that. I want to become a better poker player. I always go, learn how to cook. Like, seriously, learn how to cook. Cook for yourself every morning. Right? Like, what the hell does that have to do with poker? Well, if you learn how to cook, you become a more complete individual. If you become a more complete individual, you feel better about yourself. If you feel better about yourself, at the table, you will be more assertive. If people see you're more assertive, they're going to fold more to your C-bets in profit. There you go. And poker is one of the very few things that allows you to be more of yourself, a better form of yourself, to become better. And this comes to your health as well. When I was fat as hell, nobody folded to my C-bets. They were like, you can't even feed yourself. Do you really think I believe you have a hand? Right? Whereas when I got into better shape, people fold to your C-bets more. They fold to your 3-bets more. And people can complain about that being unfair or not, but it's like, well, no, if you look like you're on top of your game, people are going to fold to you more. And I love having a job that feeds my life and a life that feeds my job. It feels as if everything's really connected in a way that I don't think many people get to experience.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you 100% that the easiest way to improve your game, once you know the basic strategies and the mathematics and stuff, is to improve yourself. Like, I would say learning how to cook is an incredible thing. I'm actually starting the 4-Hour Chef right now because that's something I've put off for a long time. I've been okay at it, but I'm like, I really want to master it because I know what difference it makes. But like, I would tell people, like, learn how to breathe properly. Learn how to process stress through movement, through like subtle movement, so that when something uncomfortable happens at the table, you can move it through your body really quickly so it doesn't nag at you and build up in you to the point where you might blow up. And you made a great point with the cardiovascular training and how the body suddenly is like, oh, we do this? Oh, we have these resources? Okay, next level. And when people see that you're someone who has your shit together, as you said, they're more intimidated with you. You know, we look at the table, we're like, we want to target the weaker players. And if you're one of the stronger players, people are going to avoid you. It's the fear factor. It's, you know, It's the Fedor factor. It's a real thing that when someone has their whole life together, people don't want to like battle them. They want to do business with them.
Exactly.
But talking on the topics of solving the game, because we got into this a little bit earlier with kind of breaking the mold for what you can raise fold off. You had a fantastic webinar, Why Pisagno is Right. And then on the topic of rejamming, you went even deeper with ape styles, Why Ape Styles is Right. You also had a great webinar on how to defend your big blind properly. You flat too much. And another one that really helped me out was dissecting the donk bet, taking the lead away from your opponents. You also wrote a book called The Myth of Poker Talent, Why Anyone Can Be Great at Poker. Can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, your goals in writing this book, and what you hope to communicate to people through this fine piece of literature?
There's the real reason and the I've been thinking about this for a while reason. So the real reason I named it The Myth of Poker Talent is because it would sell. If you were,
Yep.
you have to remember when you walk through Barnes and Noble the next time, every time you walk by 500 books, think about that. That's a year of someone's life. That's 500 years of somebody's lives. And you're just walking by it because the cover looks weird. And you need to do something to get noticed. So I named it The Myth of Poker Talent because I remember thinking, well, if I saw that when I was a kid, I would pick that up. And then I put the claim, what they're saying is BS, that you don't have to see into somebody's soul. This is actually simple mathematics if you put it together. And I knew, well, that would make me look into the book. Well, the other reason, now that I've been thinking about it, when I got into poker, poker is the greatest thing in the world to me. I love poker with all my heart. Poker has given me everything I have. It's taken me everywhere. It's the greatest game on earth. And when I came into the game, there were a lot of people that worked very hard to make sure myself and other people felt excommunicated by the community. If you said anything that went against their jargon, they just derided you, they mocked you, they made threads about what a loser you were, talked about everything, spread rumors about you. And it was all this little inclusive group of guys who came up together, very good poker players, and they kind of controlled the backing houses and they controlled who got what deal. And at that time, you needed a deal to get on the tour because most people don't have $10,000 lying around. And I didn't like that at all. And I thought I get sick of this bro-y culture in poker. I don't like how these people treat women. I don't like how these people treat the elderly. Because the great thing about poker is it is for everyone. It is, anybody can play that game and be a champion for a day. There is something beautiful about that. And if you are taking that away from people, you are taking away my job, and I do not take kindly to that. And they all would do this crap like, I'm so good at poker. They would act as if they were God's gift to poker. And once I learned strategy, I realized not only are you guys not that good, but it's really easy to explain the few things you do. And I thought, well, I bet there's 20,000 people that want to know what you're doing and how to undo it. And I bet I would like them to make money, and I would like to help the poker economy out by helping these recreational players make money, as opposed to you who would just take it out of the economy because you swear you hate poker. And I really liked that. I had a lot of fun doing that. And like people say, like, oh, that was a shtick, right? That there's no talent in poker. And, you don't believe in poker talent. You don't believe people can be naturally talented. I genuinely believe there is far less genuine poker talent than you could imagine. Go to pokerdope.com. It's a site that will show you, it'll show you a graph of, we'll take 1,000 players with a 40% ROI in the Sunday Million. We'll have them play the Sunday Million every Sunday for 10 years. That is a hell of a sample size. You think of where you were at age 20 and age 30, or age 10 to age 20. If you had to do something every Sunday night, if you had soccer practice every Sunday night for 10 years, that is quite a bit of your life. And you put these guys with 40% ROIs on this track. And you're going to find that even though they have a 40% ROI, which, by the way, is not much in that tournament, about half of them don't make money. 10 years, 40% positive ROI. Half of them don't make a dime.
Wow.
Another 45% of them don't make anything substantial. Wow. And then there's one guy at the top, 1 out of 1,000, who effectively wins the tournament 2.5 times. Well, obviously, you're going to think that guy's a genius. And I live in a world where all we focus on is that one guy out of 1,000 and not the 999 who could be having a good time, who could just be enjoying the sport of poker, who have a good chance to make money. But if we're going to deride them because they're not one of the superstars and celebrate this one guy who actually doesn't have that great of an ROI in this tournament, we're going to have a very skewed culture very soon. Very much a church of latter-day results. Nothing that really amounts to substance in that's going to put forward our game. And I just wanted to show, hey, that one guy out of 1,000, really likely he just got lucky. If you want to know how to outplay him, here's the strategy. And here are the mathematical tools. So if these ranges ever change it someday, here's how you can devise a new 3-betting strategy. Here's how you can devise a new opening strategy. And one thing I didn't love about the book is it was more technical and more suited to online poker than I wanted it to be. But at the time, that was my expertise. I was doing a lot of work with backing houses, and I was teaching a lot of young guys how to play online poker. And I just wanted to get all those ideas down on paper before somebody else claimed them. And it was also an expansion of some of my more favored books when I was reading when I was younger that were based on combinatorics and stuff like that broke poker into a much more mathematical model, like a simple mathematical model, just multiplication and very simple algebra that made much more sense than, well, how did you make so much money at poker? I'm so aggressive. When I come in, I'm so aggressive. He's an aggressive player. He looks through players' souls. He just knows when to pull the trigger. It's like, that doesn't do anything for me. Like, how am I supposed to replicate that? How am I supposed to enjoy? No one watches Michael Jordan in highlights and says, I can replicate that. You can watch tournament poker and replicate a move. That is beautiful about the game. That makes the game great. That is the reason there's 100 million people who play poker around the world. And that we should be celebrating that. And I don't want to turn it into this very abstract notion that people are just born with some God-given gift to look into players' soul, because there's a lot of, I've done a lot of database reviews where they give me a guy, it's like, this guy's the best hero caller in the West. This guy is always right. I've never seen. And I do a blind test, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to have my little computer hero call on the river if the river aggression frequency is 35% or higher, and fold if it's 34% or lower. And I'm going to see how successful that is versus this guy. It beats the guy. It beats the superhero of poker with two huge wins, millions of dollars in earnings. It beats him. But you know what? If you look into that database and you look at the 5 that he was right on, they happen to be deep in WCOOP tournaments. And I'm really sick of that guy being God's gift to poker. And we all have to do something when he talks. But anybody else who, the doctor who comes into poker, what he's saying, or can we really trust Matt Janda? He's just trying to study medicine. Does that really mean he's a card player? And it's like, no, he could have some great ideas. Baseball was changed by, I think it was a postman who created sabermetrics. If I'm getting all of that right, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. I've been talking a long time. You talk.
Yeah, I didn't even know what ballpark you got into at the end there. Is that what Matt Janda ended up doing? Did he go to study medicine and be a doctor?
I don't know if I heard he was going to go become a doctor, but I remember people always say, I want to take my game to the next level. Read Matt Janda. He's the greatest theorist of poker I've ever seen.
Yeah, Matt Janda's videos on card runners were incredible. And I think it was also Matt Haralenko who, after winning a bracelet and doing some writing with Bill Chen, decided to go off into medicine too. And I remember at the time being like, how could these guys who can win bracelets want to leave the game? Right. And it's that thing where once you accomplish kind of what you set out to accomplish and you're you want to take your game to the next level, it's okay, go take on the real world now. Go take on the game of life that has even more potential.
My favorite story, one of my favorite stories in poker, and this is one of those stories, if it's not true, it damn well should be. Remember John Jawanda used to say in every interview he wanted to go become a doctor? Do you remember that?
I did not remember he said that, but I could totally understand. He was a wise man.
Yeah, he always said, I'm going to leave tournament poker. I'm going to go become a doctor. I heard a story that John Jawanda brought that up for the umpteenth time at a dinner. And Phil Ivey said something to the effect of, I'll bet you $1 million you won't complete med school. And I don't mean we're going to do a bet for $1 million. I mean, I will give you $1 million if you complete med school. Because if you wanted to do it, you would have done it by now, right? And I remember thinking, that is the sickest thing I have ever heard in my life, because there's so many people that there's one thing I can't stand, it's talking. Like, I want to do something. It's like, well, that just puts you in a very limited category of every single person on earth. You know what I mean? And the fact that Phil Ivey called him on it, because you notice we don't hear about John Janda wanting to be a doctor anymore, do we? Because he has $1 million paycheck if he does it, and he doesn't want to do it. So, and that's one of the things I love about gambling is the truth serum. Do you really believe that? Yeah, let's put money on it. Well, I don't believe it that much. Well, I guess you don't believe it then, do you? You don't believe that in your convictions. Yeah. Right?
Cool. Yeah, I like that you talked about how we can replicate a move. And to be able to replicate a move, the important thing is to be able to understand the theory behind it. Because when we first started watching card runners, Lego poker videos, it's like, cool, we could make all these plays that we saw great players do, but we didn't know why. And as soon as someone knows the theory, suddenly everything makes sense. You get the mathematics, everything makes sense. You understand what independent chip modeling is, everything makes sense. You understand the importance of payouts, it all makes sense. And that was one of the things that I really liked about the way you broke down tournament poker. You were in Jonathan Little's Excelling at No Limit Hold'em. That's kind of the project that brought you and I together officially. And I absolutely loved your chapter, specifically the part where you said, you know, poker is all about finding every little edge you can and pressing it, you know, classic David Sklansky back in the day. But then you brought it over and you looked at what Phil Helmuth was doing to get the results. And you said he's finding these investments that are profitable, but he's never risking his entire bankroll. And you talked about the importance of playing with portions of your bankroll, portions of your tournament, without risking the whole thing, because you don't want to be able to get taken out in one foul swoop by a bout of bad luck. You want to be able to let skill run its course. And I think it's the same with bankroll management as well. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of stack preservation, small ball strategy, really giving yourself to apply your edge over the course of the entire day and the entire tournament? As opposed to the old philosophy of if you can get a 51% edge, you take it every single time. Because if you could run infinite tournaments, then that's going to be profitable.
That's a really good question. Well, we can start with what is our goal as a tournament poker player? And this sounds really simple, but let's start with this. Your goal is to cash a lot and to win a lot. But tournament structures are very flat these days, the payout structures. It's better for the casino. It's better for the online site that they pay a number of players. And that means when you do cash, it's going to be very flat. And that means they pay a few more people than they used to. So if you want to get a quick return on your money, you have to cash. But once you're within that flat payout structure, there's not really a great incentive to go from 196 to 48th because it's going to be a very incremental rise in prize winnings. Whereas first, second, third have a gargantuan amount of profit compared to these other spots. So your two goals are to cash and then to win. The people who do not make money at tournament poker are the people who win but can never seem to find a way to cash, and the people who cash but can never seem to find a way to win. So thinking about that from those terms, I break down tournament poker into a few different categories. So the first, let's say third of the tournament, maybe 25% of the tournament. To me, in my mind, this is the monopoly money level. Everybody has way more chips than the big blinds indicate, and they don't really care. The Patriots fan who's there with his Rockstar energy drink, and he showed up half an hour early, right? I am never, ever showing up late because everybody is opening everything, and when I 3-bet, they're calling me, and they're out of position. And this is my time to drag people out to the river and drown them. Because if I get anything called on the river, it is going to be substantial. And if I start the tournament, let's say the tournament starts with 5,000 chips. By the time the Too Cool for School Pro sits down in level 4, if I have 5,900 chips and he has 4,870, that is actually a really significant edge over time. And that is really easy to achieve if you are strategically 3-betting people who are opening too much, which is pretty much everybody at the beginning of tournaments, and getting your value bets in later streets because people feel like it's monopoly money. I don't really care if I lose 10% of my chips here. Then where the stack preservation is going to come into is after the next level. The next level is what I call the dogfight in my head, which is the antes become an issue here now. So now you're not focusing as much on 3-betting. You're focusing on opening as well. And opening can be significant because if everybody folds, you make 2.5 big blinds. Ace King offsuit makes 2.5 big blinds. So if you had 6-3 suited, you raised, everybody folded, you just turned Mark Sanchez into Tom Brady's quarterback rating. You're doing pretty nice, right? Now, if you go beyond that, now here's where stack preservation becomes very important. If you are going to cash a significant amount of tournaments, right up on that bubble, you're either going to have enough chips that you can go after everybody, because everybody has the exact same opinion of on the bubble, you got to be aggressive. Well, if everybody has that same bright idea, then it's not going to do you a bunch of good to go out there looking for the kill. It's also really hard to clarify what people's ranges are at that point. If you 3-bet someone at any other point of the tournament, you can be fairly certain they're going to 4-bet all in with the top 4% of their range, and they're going to call with pretty much everything else and fold the ass end. On the bubble, it's really hard to know what they're going to 4-bet with because this is the only time many players turn up some initiative because they've been taught since the beginning of time that you have to do so on the bubble. This is a time for stack preservation. You're not going to do very loose 3-bets. You probably shouldn't be opening ace-6 suited under the gun. You shouldn't be opening 6-7 suited under the gun. You want to keep it like very like close to the vest. Then once you get in the money, like you're right back into the dogfight. Go into it. Now that's tournament stage wise where I talk about preservation. But now this is like the thing I've been working on the last year is I couldn't tell you why this was, but when I saw people flatting 3-bets all the time, and I 2010, I flatted 3-bets all the time because people thought you couldn't do that. They assumed I had aces when I did it. So they would just check and give up, and I'd lead turn, and they'd fold. And then people started playing way better towards it, and I went, I don't like this. This is probably a leak in my game. And I was looking at these databases, and it would say, if you raise and you call the 3-bet, you're negative 1.6 big blinds every hand, but if you raise and fold, you're negative 2.5 or whatever your raise size was. And everybody was saying, hey, that's improvement. You're saving almost 100 big blinds per 100 hands. And there was something in my head that went, something's wrong. I don't know why. Data isn't enough. You need to know what you're looking at. And I think I finally figured out what it is. And it goes to your stack preservation. Something that we always make fun of live pros saying they pick their spots. That if you don't understand that, you don't understand professional gambling. Professional gamblers, we can look at investors. We can look at investors who have made billions of dollars. The way they make their money is called asymmetric bets, right? Asymmetric bets means there's a very low downside and there's a huge upside. So you only need to hit on a couple of those. And if your track record's a little bit better, that kind of builds in your margin of error because you don't have to be right that often. Whereas if you're trying to beat the market by picking a ton of stocks, and there's going to be some difficulty in that because the market is just such a crazy thing to gauge. Whereas in No Limit Hold'em, there are asymmetric bets as well. When you are in position, your downside is actually fairly limited if you accept the fact that when people check raise, they are not bluffing nearly as much. Across every database I have ever looked at, people are preposterously bad at check raise bluffing. It just doesn't really enter their sphere. And if you read The Myth of Poker Talent, you can read it at Barnes & Noble for all I care. You don't have to pay me anything. Read the section on check raising. You'll get 90% of the check raises people execute. And that is the only time you could really let the pot size get out of control, is if you bet one pair, a guy check raises you and you get stubborn, okay, you give away the tournament. I can't do anything about that. Like, if you're not willing to play, you're not willing to play. But if you are willing to play, you have a bet there with a very nice upside and not much of a downside, because in no limit hold'em, being in position, people don't understand how strong that is. When I played 7-card stud, there was no way. Think about this. You raise pre-flop, the guy calls you. On the flop, he checks, you bet. Most guys check raise is somewhere between 6 to 10%. That's 2 pairs, sets, nut flush draws. That's a bluff once every presidential term, right? It's not that much. And you see bet the guy calls, he checks you on the turn. You have an option to see all 7 cards. If this is 2 very small bets, the pre-flop raise and the flop bet. When I was playing 7-card stud, do you know how hard it would have been to get to 7th Street with 2 bets? That is very, very difficult. And that is a huge edge to just decide, I want to see all 7 cards. However, if you don't want to see all 7 cards for cheap, you can bet and make the pot bigger. So you decide the pot gets bigger when you have a good hand. And when you don't have a good hand, you get to see free cards. You get to go on. And when neither of you has a hand, you're probably going to win. So the upside on this is insane. And this is a very good bet to make. Whereas if you think about, now let's put you're out of position. You raise to 2.5x, the guy 3 bets to 6.5x. You have 10-8 suited, you call. You're losing less money on average if you call there than if you raise folded. I still don't like it because your average stack size deep in a poker tournament is like 40 big blinds. If you call that 3-bet, call a flop bet, fold the turn, you've just lost 10 big blinds. That's 25% of your stack. I don't care how good you are at tournament poker. If you are regularly giving 25% of your stack to the guy to your left, you will lose. That is something that is not expressed in any mathematical form. We do not have a form of mathematics that can express the interconnected nature of a poker tournament. A poker tournament is not solved. I don't believe there will ever be a form of mathematics that will solve it. It is very interesting, the software that does try to project it, but I don't trust it. I think if you want giving away 10 big blinds, I can't describe to you how bad that is. That's like you just got aces and you mucked. It's like you guys went, like, how do you expect, like, that's literally the expectation you just lost. That, like, how do you expect to win a tournament if you're going to do that? And sorry, I'll let you finish I'll let you talk in just a second, but I'm really on something that I enjoy here. Hold on.
Go.
No, it's, well, the other thing is, this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, scoring those river bets. On the other hand, if like you bet 7 big blinds into a 24 big blind pot, the guy just looks at you strange and calls you on the river in position. You just created a 13 big blind pot. That's aces plus ace king. You strap 2 of those together, that's 26 big blinds. That's an extra stack deep in tournaments. You can be a very mediocre tournament poker player. If you give yourself an extra life, an extra shell deep in every tournament, you're going to make some money.
All In is brought to you by 888 Poker, the second largest online poker network in the world. Home of the 888 Live Tour and some of the best structured, big guaranteed tournaments online. If you'd like to support the show, visit 888.com and use the promo code ALLIN when you make your first deposit. Make a $20 deposit or more and receive $20 extra in cash to play with instantly. 888 Poker has the softest games online and is a great place to get started in the world of online poker. Don't forget to use the promo code ALLIN to help support this podcast. I really like what you said about how even in isolation it can make you more chips to defend to the 3-bet rather than folding, because on that one decision point of the decision tree, the pre-flop decision, it is higher EV to defend than to fold in the fantasy situation about the 10-8 suited. But What's not factored into the situation is the future EV of, okay, well, how often, do I miss and I have to fold? No big deal. But how often do I flop top pair that I have to call down with that is no good for me? Or how often do I flop the draw that I want to call down with to realize my equity? And when I reach the river, I'm at the bottom of my range and I just have to muck. And I just invested half my chips passively because I was trying to maximize my expectation and realize my equity. But I was just running the math. I didn't have that kind of intangible aggression in my favor. I didn't have that intangible of giving my opponent an opportunity to make a mistake, which is one of those really high value things that exists in poker that goes beyond the mathematics and that the formulas just don't solve. And also like the flexibility, the utility of the stack that is lost by being like, well, I want to go with the math here. And this isn't cash games. Like in cash games, you run the play every time. You want to maximize it every time for every single decision point. Because everything is equal. But in tournaments, things are magnified, situations are worth more. You can find yourself in really unique settings where it's not a good idea to take any excess variance because you're in a really profitable situation if you just, bide your time, chill out, and just play it simple.
Well, and this is going back to earlier in the show. People go, I want to be better at tournament poker. Read. And if you want to read about other things, other than poker, and something I was reading about war strategy, and it made a lot more sense when we were talking about, because this is a war game. Like we're moving our pieces on a board.
Yeah.
And imagine a battle where one straggler got left behind in a war. And it's like, well, how many men is it going to take to save Private Dumbass out there in the field? It's going to take 20 men. It's going to take 20 men to go save him. It's going to take 20 of them. And what do we get back when we win? Well, we get one.
Wow.
We get one. We get one guy. Do you think Sun Tzu is making that bet? Sun Tzu goes, if he dies, he dies. I'm sorry. He's got to get himself back here. I got to keep these 20 guys to do the front offensive. I don't have limitless troops, right? And you do have to give up some battles. I think that's what really attracts me to tournament poker is that can't be expressed in Card Runners EV. It's just, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. You have to go out there and you need to, it's just like being a quarterback in the NFL. They say your 10th year, you start really feeling it. You start really getting the view of the plays, where to give up, when to press and whatnot. And there's something you're not going to get in tournament poker until you really push and really take a lot of these different battles and not take certain battles and see how it works out. And that to me is very fascinating. And that was something I really loved about Phil Helmuth, was speaking about Phil Helmuth. Phil Helmuth, I'm convinced, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but he's a genius. He's because think about it. Now, think about it. He's in like these spots. Every time he does a big laydown on TV, the spot is always like, I don't know if he's doing this intentionally or not, but it is just so smart to me. He opens to like 2.5x, the tightest player at the table, 3 bets. He has like jacks, right? Yeah. He calls. The board comes 6-3-8. He checks, the guy bets. Now this is a spot, just like we were saying, imagine a guy walking into a Wall Street bank and it's like, explain your trades today. Well, I didn't know what to do, so I put all my money in my portfolio on it and saw what would happen. Like, what? the hell? Say that again, Tom? Oh, I said, well, that's what you do when it's like, I have jacks there and I don't know if it's good, so I moved all in. So I called down 3 straights, right? And Phil Helmuth, whether he realizes or not, I don't know if it's an act, right? But he just gets super pissed off. He folds, and like one time out of 4, the guy has 10s or ace queen, but it doesn't matter because versus his whole range, and like the fact that your margin of error there is very small, it's like you're giving up a lot there. But I mean, the hell with it. You got to give up some skirmishes on the battlefield. He does that. Yeah. Well, what do they put on TV? Well, they put that on TV, and then what does every dumbass at home think? I could bluff Phil Helmuth. This guy's a fish. I know not to fold an overpair. What a dumbass. And then they go to the tournament, And then they're playing. What does everybody say about Phil Helmuth? They say if he's in the main event, he's one of the guys you want, right? The reason for that is every one of these dumbasses who watches him on TV tries to bluff him, not realizing this guy won WSOP Europe. This guy won the WSOP main event. This guy has 15 bracelets. He's not a fish. He knows what your range is when you triple barrel him from the button is slightly different when your 3-bet percentage was 5% the entire day and you 3-bet him from early position. He's not dumb. And then when I have seen him play, he never makes a sound. He never makes a sound on those pots. So the cameras don't come over and they don't see this huge hero call Phil just made. And if they do it, they're not going to bring attention to it because Phil being uncharacteristically quiet off to the rest of the field. Whereas when he does a big speech, now he's got 30 seconds of TV time, 45 seconds of TV time. And when he gets a big hand cracked, now there's 2 minutes of TV time. So now you have another set of players who think all he ever has is a big hand. Because all I ever see him is he has a big hand and it gets cracked. Well, if I ever play with Phil Helmuth, I'm not going to deal with him. So when he's at the WSOP Europe final table and he's playing 40% of the hands, nobody's testing him. And I'm sitting there going, why? He's right there. Anybody who's opening 40%, you can 3-bet King 10 offsuit for a profit. You can turn King 10 off into Ace King profitably versus someone doing that. Even probably more so versus Phil Helmuth as a pronounced fold to 3-bet percentage. But yeah, anyway, moving forward.
Did you watch the analysis of that with Jonathan Little? Because I actually watched a webinar that they did reviewing that win because I had watched it and like Phil's play was absolutely insane. I'm like, how is he doing that? He claimed that he played every hand blind until he got to the turn. And at that point he cared. But before then he was just going to go with his reads and with his pressure that people want to move up the payout structure. And this is the craziest part because he talks about it very adamantly. You know, he's a big believer in The Secret and like manifesting your future and whatnot. He said that the guy who got second in the tournament was playing Chinese poker with him or something like the day before the tournament. He's like, yo, Phil, you are going to win the event. I will get second. And then every day at the end of the day, he'd be like, hey, Phil, don't forget, you're going to win the event. I'm going to get second. And lo and behold, they get heads up and Phil's like, I guess I'm going to really win this thing.
Man. I love it. Like, I know it's not, I don't even care if it's an act. I'm not even saying like I could be friends with him. I'm just saying I love that guy. I love what a character is. I love that story. That's what poker needs right there. That is amazing.
He's so funny. And like I met him when I was at Twitchcon 2 years ago, the 1 year I went to that because we were both speaking on a panel together. And I got to actually hang out with him a bit after. And he's just so funny. He's goofy, he's funny, but he's like nice. Like he's a good person. And a lot of that's a show. And like you said, when you see him just keep making a hero call, he's keeping a low profile. And it's because I think Phil is someone who sees the bigger picture. And naturally, we talked about maturity and how we learn as we age. The guy's in his 50s, I believe. He's done this all before. He went through all the math when he was young. He went through all the books and he's learned about things that us younger people don't know about yet. And he's applying them. And we're like, what? Must be dumb. It's like, no, we just don't understand. And as we get older and see it, we'll be like, oh, I get what he was doing. Like you're now cluing in on when he's getting the attention versus when he's not, because this is the image he wants the whole world to think of him. Like he's operating on an extremely, extremely high level. And that's what the real game is, right? Poker is about a lot more than mathematics.
And even if it's not an act, I don't judge anyone. Like we never heard Michael Jordan. They always talk about what a great competitor he is. If you ever watched him live, he'd be an inch away from somebody's ear yelling, "I just drove your lane," cuss word, right? He was an asshole when he played, right? And and then people get all indignant when these poker players are like, Phil Helmuth wants to win. I believe that. And to his credit, he has found a way to win consistently. Since you have not won as much as him, you don't know what that entails. You don't know what sacrifices he's made to do that. If that guy's a little strange when he's winning, but that's what he wants, he's a competitor. That's something that has to happen. Like, I love it when, I got an email today where some guy said, your recent podcast, oneouter.com podcast, check it out.
Holla.
He said, your recent podcast disturbed me. He's like, you're so angry. And I wanted to write back, how do you think I got from my situation when I was younger to here now? Do you think I sat around watching Netflix at night? Do you think you couldn't go a little crazy to get out of there? You become a competitor, you do have to become a bit of a prick. I'm sorry to say. Like, you're going to have that in you. And some people, I respect the hell out of Roger Federer because I think the superior way to be is in most sports. I'm not saying Phil Helmuth, we just talked about some of the metagame considerations for his table image, but I think the better way to go is to be super under control at all times. Like, that is very intimidating when you watch a Federer, right? But the other side of the spectrum is going to be a Phil Helmuth. When Tim Tebow was doing his weird thing, I was like, I'm sorry, you need this in the game. I mean, what sacrifices did that guy make to get to the NFL? You don't think he's going to go to some direction that's somewhere? And it's the same thing with any competitor. They're going to be extreme personalities. That's the only way you triumph in something that 100,000 people want and one guy gets it. That one guy is very likely to be a little more mentally ajar than the other 99.99%.
Yeah. The person's going to be very eccentric. They're going to be very out there because if you're completely normal, you're not going to be able to make the sacrifices that it requires to achieve insane levels of greatness. Mm-hmm. You can have a very high quality of life. You can have great accomplishments. But if you want to be number one in a space that's very competitive, you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices, most likely. And that's going to lead to an imbalanced life of sorts. Sure. And so people who are coming from a place of balance will be like, dude, like, why are you so weird? And it's because I wanted to get this and I did what I needed to do to get it. And like, that's just a thing with like views and stuff. Like, people are always going to get disturbed by people who are different than them or whatever, but that's their problem and their projection. And I'm glad you didn't like write back in an angry thing. You're just like, you read the email and you're like, okay, that's nice to know that someone feels that way. But that's to do with them and their interpretation and nothing to do with me. Maybe what I said triggered something in them, but it triggered something in them. It didn't trigger something like from me. And I think it's important in those situations to be like, not take it personally, take a breath. If there's some value in a response, you can say, cool. Or maybe it's one of those situations where it's like, this doesn't need a response. I'll acknowledge what was received. I'll acknowledge the communication. But beyond that, that's that. Because especially with the way people can reach you anyway, it's like unsolicited conversation, especially does not require a response. Because like they're asking something of you and you're like, wait, what did you do for me that I have to send you a response if I don't really want to, kind of thing, you know?
Well, and this was something you were way better at than I was, is I used to take that way more seriously, but you were much more into you were definitely a calmer personality. I noticed when we were both doing the teaching thing. And to me, but you were talking about like getting to a higher level at one point. And was something you were saying. And I remember like if I had gotten that email 4 years ago, I would have said, oh, piss off, buddy. I disturbed you. Right? It's like boy, I want your life if I disturbed you. Like, but the thing I'm thinking about now is that's the coward's way out, is anger. Like the coward's way out is
just like reactivity and not pausing to actually interpret, just the snap reaction. Yeah, that's the coward.
Well, and if you want to be a better poker player, you have to intimately understand other people. And that means in your day-to-day life, you're going to have to level with people and you're going to have to think about people and you're going to have to see things from their perspective. And that is a practice all day. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. My greatest struggle as a coach is I say, what do you think the field does in this spot? And the player always tells me what they themselves would do. And I always have to say, now let's go beyond what because you can't blame them, because that's the only poker game they've ever intimately experienced is their own. Now, if you want something that to me is like the higher thinking is like, how could you explain it? And this goes back to communication. To communicate clearly is to think clearly. How could you communicate to that person how you are as a person? How could you do that in a way they would understand? And if you can understand them and communicate to them on a level they understand, that means you understand them and you can be a better poker player because you'll understand them more at the table. And the thing I would tell these people now, I gave you the explanation that I just thought in my mind. But again, talking about if you want to be a better poker player, you have to go out into the world. I was at an art museum in New York, and they were doing a thing on Tibetan art. And there was this woman who said, what do you see here? And it was like clearly a painting of a demon. And I was like, Jesus, right? And they said, no. In Hindu culture, this is considered an enlightened being. And I was like, oh, come on, right? And then she broke it down. I love this woman because she could clearly tell she was talking to like a sports guy. And or like a bunch of people that were more into sports. And she goes, have you ever seen a basketball coach on the side screaming at their players? That person is not a negative individual. That person wants positive things to happen, but they're going to have to do it in a way that is really looking angry at the time. This is an enlightened being in this culture. They consider that an enlightened state of being if they're going to push you to this degree. And I was thinking, like, this person is like, that communication is so important, like so intelligent. The fact that that person could communicate, like, negativity can have a really nice positive effect on you if you think about it. And I just really love that, how that just completed the whole circle, and that you had to go into an art museum in New York to get that and to understand things more intimately, to communicate better.
Yeah, it's amazing what kind of perspective we can get when we actually go out into the world and learn completely different things. And that's something that I personally am just kind of starting to do in the past few years, because I was so just obsessed with the strategy and seeing the limited scope and thinking there's only one way to get better, and it's from solving these things and it's from running the numbers. And it's like, you have no idea who's going to be your greatest teacher out there and what your biggest lesson is going to come from, unless you just go out there. And while you're out there, you be present with the environment that you're in, instead of running through the hands you were thinking about earlier and being absent. Because when we're not present, we're not going to get any of the benefit. But when we're present and we're putting ourselves into all kinds of new situations and uncomfortable situations, we are going to learn and we are going to grow, and we are going to do it fast, because our psyche's being like, okay, how do I make this situation work for me? What is here for me? I'm present, I'm looking, I'm taking it in. And that's where, like, presence is so powerful in life. And like you were saying with your poker game, when you're able to be more present, you just start picking up on everything without even trying. It's just automatically being taken into your subconscious, so that when you need it, it's there.
It's funny you say you're like just getting new to this, but like, I'm an infant when it comes to being present. Is it really hard for you, Evan, like to be present? You always seemed much more present than me. I'm usually screaming at someone somewhere or other, wherever I'm at, drinking a cup of coffee, but you have always seemed more present to me. So that really surprises me. Are you telling me that's something that's really new to you?
Yeah. So this is something that I was hoping we get into later on the podcast, which is, pretty much perfect timing right now. But I believe that we are a product of our thoughts, and we are a product of our habits. And when I had the habits of waking up, smoking cigarettes, sitting at the computer, firing up 16 tables, clicking away, listening to house music, being around other individuals who are doing the same thing, high stress environment, go figure, I was a very amped up, high intensity, high stress individual who had a hard time calming down, because that's the environment that I put myself in. That is the nutrition that I put myself in. Looking at food as information, you take in a bunch of stimulants, you're going to be a very high strung individual.
Present.
When I shift present, when I shifted the routine to be like, okay, the first thing I do when I wake up is I sit and just develop my patience. That's the start. Then I do my breathing. I would call it pranayama. But that's when I do my breathing. I'm nourishing my body with the most precious resource it has, which is oxygen. And then when it has enough oxygen, then I start to, get present and really observe what's going on. Where do I still have stress? Where do I still have worries? What's the common thought pattern that's going on? And with that oxygen in me, I actually have, and my eyes closed, so I'm not taking anything in new. I can actually process and work through what I have in me. Some would call it karma. Others would just call it thoughts, whatever it is. And then I think you can relate to this one. I'll take what's really getting at me and I'll write it down so that I can get it out of mind and onto paper so that my mind doesn't have to keep thinking about it anymore. It knows it's somewhere if it needs to be dealt with later. And in this process of being patient, purifying myself, and at the same time filling myself with goodness before I've even had a bite to eat, because what we eat, as you know, greatly affects our state of being. But if I put myself in a really strong position to start before I talk to anyone, before I check the cell phone, before I check my emails and start to get on other people's agendas and reactivity and all this and that, I'm able to come from a place of calmness and stability because I took the time to be like, okay, what is it that's bothering me? What is it that I need to work through? And what can I do to do that before adding something else to my plate, before adding on another commitment or another responsibility that, yes, I'm going to be able to do, but it's going to keep me from dealing with something that's been bothering me for a week, whether it's an emotional thing, an intellectual thing, whatever, an open thought loop, open emotional thing. It's going to keep that energy is going to keep me from doing the other things well. And it was like over the past 2 years, I have done an insane amount of what we call burning karma, which is working through all the old stuff, all the old emotional stuff, the people I was upset with, the people who I had upset, the apologies, the acceptance, all this and that. I had to go through this for years. And the more I went through it, the therapy and all that, the less weight there was being carried around, the less energetic emotional charge there was weighing on my system, draining my energy. Slowly, I became calmer and more at ease and more at peace and more able to be patient and more able to be present. And the less I needed to run to the next project or commit to the next thing, because I was actually okay with being here and with working on the things that I used to want to run from. But you know what? Now I'm like, I actually want to work through them and get the lessons from them, because otherwise it's just going to bother me later, or it's going to come up again later. And I recognize that going through the lessons that I missed sooner rather than later was going to help me have a more easeful and enjoyable future, because I wouldn't have to carry that baggage with me anymore. And I could start to travel lighter and have the insights as opposed to just the painful experiences. And you met me at a time when I was really starting to go through the process. And I pretty much almost stopped playing cards after the win in 2016, because I'm like, I need to do this work. And until I've done this work, I can't be my best self. And as a teacher, I need to be my best self. And to do that, I have to take a step back and do that work. And, I'm not perfect. I still go back and forth, and I'll catch my times where I slip into my old bad habits. And then I'll be like, why am I doing this? I'm like, something's hurting me. What is it that's hurting me? What is it that's bothering me? How can I go and deal with that before going to my coping mechanism? Even if my coping mechanism is healthy, like say it's exercise, I can say, well, how can I ensure that if I'm going to go do my exercise, I'm going to follow that up by dealing with the thing, cultivate the energy to deal with the thing that is not necessarily urgent, like, top of mind, got to deal with it, but it's important. And I can tell that it's something that's deep down that's important. Those are harder to get to because it doesn't seem as pressing. But deep down, when you really, really ask yourself, what is it that is bothering me the most right now, or what has been bothering me for a long time? And that comes up. You'd be like, no. You're like, actually, yeah. And you take a look at it and then you work with it. Suddenly everything in your life benefits from it. And once you see that process happening once or twice, you're like, okay, there's value in doing this kind of thing instead of just trying to move away from it or distract from it or fill my head with more information so I don't have room to process the old. It just becomes something they're like, okay, I want to do this. And I want to use my exercise practice so it'll stir up some energy so I can go handle this or sit with this or make peace with this or forgive this person or forgive myself for this and that. And through that process, basically there's a ton of electric charge running through the system, and every painful experience we have had or a thing that we did that we felt forced to do or didn't want to do, or we did for peer pressure reasons that we didn't agree with, that's carrying charge in the system, the energetic system of the body, which leads to tension, anxiety, anger, and lashes out. Every once in a while that lashes out because the energy is too much. But the more we unpack it, sit with it, great exercise is writing or drawing pictures to ground that energy and get it out of the system and calmly ground it. There's less charge on the system. The animal, the human, becomes more calm because there's less stuff running through it. And this different state of being comes because you're just like, I'm okay. Then the charge goes away and we have a natural state of calm because there's like less electricity running through you. You know, if you have two light bulbs and you have one that's, you know, very dim and you have one that's on full blast, well, the one that's dim is going to be more enjoyable to be around because it's not overwhelming. But basically with the amount of trauma and pain and suffering that we've been exposed to, especially like, I know it may sound weird, but especially in the North American culture, this culture of fear, this culture of competition, this culture of aggression that we've been raised and programmed in, people are running on full fucking blast in terms of how much charge is in the system. And that's why it's like, whoa, like, I don't know if I can be around that. And people haven't been given the tools to bring the charge down slowly, because someone who's really charged and really out of control is someone who it's easy to sell fake happiness to. And so a culture of fear is a great culture for marketing. And that's why I think we're not really given the tools, or if people try to use the tools, people be like, yo, that shit's weird. Like, why are you doing that? Same as what you said with the poker. It kind of shuns the better way of being because those in control would rather just keep people the way as they are because it's easier for them to be in charge. Does that kind of resonate and help you kind of understand how I've shifted to become someone who's quite calm, who in the past, man, I had my lash outs too.
As
very much so.
Single person does. And the other thing is when people are, not to get too deep, but I think human beings don't even mean to do it. They just kind of, there's a herd mentality and they do keep people down. It's very natural for whatever reason. Yeah. Every society, you think about it, it's very strange. Every society has 1% ruling the other 99%. I'm not even talking about like income divide or anything. There's always a ruling party. And when we've tried to go like totally equal, it doesn't work the few times it's been tried. And so something, not to get too far into that, but I always, like even these people that you bring about like North American culture, I think you brought up we're animals. We forget we're animals, and animals have a overdrive complex because that's how you survive. And it actually goes against our nature to sit back. If you are starving or you think you're starving, the natural thought, the profitable thought, what's going to keep you alive is I need to find more information about where the food is to take care of myself. Whereas you found like the more information, I'm going to smoke my cigarettes when I wake up and I'm going to play these tournaments. I'm going to talk to my friends and I'm going to listen to house music and I'm going to watch these YouTube videos. And it's like information. Whereas I bet when you took what was really bothering you and you meditated, even though you didn't think about it for like 20 minutes, when you came back to that problem right after you meditated, you saw it from a different angle than you'd seen it before, right? That's the thing that really fascinates me. Before I go in to work out, I don't think about my problems, but to me, like weightlifting is meditation because you're watching your breathing. You talked about your environment. Everybody at my gym are like really motivated individuals, really into clean eating, stuff like that. You're around those people, you're hearing them talk. I'm forced to shut up. I know it might seem amazing to some of you guys listening. It is possible for me to do so. But I'm forced to shut up because I'm lifting weights and I can't talk during a lot of the time. And I'm just listening to people and focusing on my breathing. And always right after I'm done with that, I look at a problem that was bugging me before and I go, oh, well, this is why that's bugging me. I should bring that up with that person. Whereas before I had no idea. It was just, like you said, it's that charge in your system. You don't know what to do about it. And it's so weird to tell people, sit there and do nothing. What is that going to do? Like there's no part of our animal being that gets that. If I do that, I'll die. Or like fasting can be a really spiritual experience, but your mind's really going to repel that.
Right.
And
just like you're really onto it here, because you talk about how like the animal part of our being needs to keep moving to survive. It needs to get the nutrition. It needs to get the information. But if we're coming from a place of where we don't have enough of those things, yes, we need to go do what we can to get them. But when we know that our basic nutritional needs are getting met, and we know that our basic digestive needs are getting met, which comes from the slowing down, and we know we're actually getting the right information, there isn't this need to go get more, because we realize, oh, I actually have enough, or I have more than enough. The problem is most of us have not been educated on what are the right things to eat. What is the actual nutrition? And most of the information that we're being fed is with an agenda of trying to get us to buy something. So we're getting fed like, the candy of the information industry, which is highly addictive, but not highly effective in terms of making us feel better. And that's why we keep being like, oh, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need more. And it's only when we do nothing, what that does for it is it allows us to calm down so we can actually look at, okay, I've put 50 pieces of information into my head today, whether it's from actually reading a book or just exposing myself to the world around me. What did I get from those? And when we sit down and do nothing, we actually have the chance to reflect on and unpack what it is. And we can say, okay, I got a lot of good stuff today, I'm going to use it. Or we can be like, wow, I spent 3 hours watching that video that is not relevant to my situation at all. I'm like, well, it was cool and I might have learned something so I can sound smart in terms of helping my quality of life. No, that didn't help. And that's where like double freak out comes in, because you're like, wow, not only did I not get better in the last 3 hours, but like I filled up some of my like memory space with this thing that I don't fucking need. Like, why'd I do that? Oh shit. And then like the overreactive rebounding behavior kind of comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because what you're talking about there, a friend of mine, he's a consultant in France for like a really big company, and he was learning about poker, and we met each other, and he was like the best friend I could have ever had because the guy had money, he was from a really good upbringing and very good parents, and he didn't have kid gloves with me, right? Mm-hmm. And he was always talking about, yeah, you got all this information. What does it mean? Like the whole thing consultants do with some of these like really big companies that do help people is, you got all this information, but reach down. What's the big conclusion you got out of that? And a lot of times he would ask me that and I go, I've got nothing, dude. Like I watched that 3-hour video and like you said, I can say a few statistics now and sound smart. What does it mean? I don't know. I really don't know. And to communicate clearly is to think clearly. And the thing I love about having students is you can't just prattle on for 20 minutes in a lesson unless you really want an angry student. So you have to get to the crux of the matter. Why is this important?
All In is part of the Poker News Podcast Network, which covers everything from the world of poker with plenty of insight, analysis, strategy, and commentary. Learn more about the other shows on the Poker News Podcast Network. Look them up on Audioboom. How often do you take time to reflect, give appreciation, and kind of look back to celebrate all that you've done? Because I know you're someone who's always moving forward. You're always on to the next thing. You're always super busy. But do you have a regular practice of like stopping to check in and being like, wow, I did a lot today, or I did a lot this week, or I've helped a lot of people over the last year, and like I'm going to let myself actually feel the good feeling that I should for having done
yes
that?
And no. One thing that I always have a hard time expressing to people is I fight with this feeling that if I'm not working, I'm worthless. I have a really dark place that comes from. I know where that comes from. And I struggle with that every day. And I literally, I can't, when I want to read a book, I have to go to a cafe a lot of the time, because if I can see my office, there's some like deep need of, I have to go and do it. And if I want to take a night off, I have to go. I've been to like 3 hockey games in the last 2 weeks. And, you know, that might seem strange to a lot of people, but I'm going there to completely turn off everything. Because once I'm in an arena, I'm just surrounded by this thing I have to focus on. And that's complete relaxation to me. So that's the no of it. The yes of it is, yeah, recently I've begun, well, I pray. And when I pray, I always try to, if you think about a conversation with, and you can do this with the universe or yourself or God. I know I'm not supposed to say that because people who are really into, like I always, okay, talking about my faith is really tough because a lot of people have a view of what a Christian is, and I don't blame them for it because they've brought that on themselves. I think it was Gandhi who said, I like Christ, I don't like Christians. I don't go to church. I read the Bible every day. I love the Bible. And one of the things that it had a part of the Bible, it said, you know, when you give thanks to God, and it'll rain honor on yourself. And I thought that's interesting. But then I thought about it. If you're having a conversation with God, the universe, your inner being, and you imagine that as really another person speaking back to you. If all you ever did was grieve about everything going on in your life, you would be a terrible friend, right? That's a really annoying person. And so what I started doing is I'd start walking the city. I started walking to the Prudential Center all the time to go to hockey games. And I just have a little talk with God under my breath. And, God, I really appreciate how good that coffee was. God, I really like that I got to use Spanish today because I was losing my Spanish. And, it was really nice to get into a full conversation with somebody in Spanish. And what I've learned is, people who are even atheist psychologists, I've looked this up, they talk about listing gratitudes. This doesn't have to, you don't have to believe in God to do this. But listing gratitudes, like they've done a lot of research into it. Like that really does help you quite a bit. And I started doing that, and I started realizing there's a line in there's a song by Richie Cunning, an amazing rapper. It's called Pure Imagination. And he's just imagining this like amazing life he could have if he made it as a rapper. And he said, I want to have too many unforgettable nights to remember. And I remember thinking, like, if I tried to go over my whole life and think of all the amazing things I've gotten to experience traveling the world, I've lived on 4 different continents. I've visited 40 something countries. If I think of all that, like I can't even think of all of it. It's so much. And then that made me really grateful because if you ask somebody at the beginning of your life, before you start on this MMORPG of life, like, do you want a rich life? Do you want an easy life? Do you want a good life? Do you want an exciting life? Or do you want a full life? I think I would say full life. Like it when I go to the movie, I want it to be exciting. I don't want to make $120K a year because I went to school and I woke up at 9 and I got to work at 10. I got off at 6 and I went home and watched Game of Thrones. I don't want that. Even though that'd be an easier life, that would be a richer life. I want the full life, and I've experienced poverty. I've experienced riches. And it's something you were talking about earlier. you were talking about how we, in North American culture, we just feed this consumer culture. People always talk about going broke in poker like it's this awful thing. One of the best things that ever happened to me in my life was going broke. That was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because when I had a ton of money, I was not happy. And once I was broke, I realized, well, what makes me happy? Reading, coffee, talking with people, walking the city. And you know what? All those things are free. You can do them with anything. And then once I realized I can be happy with anything, I started being a better person to be around. I started being happier, and good things started coming my way. And that, I used to think, oh, guys with money get all the girls. And it's like, no, a lot of guys with money like mastered themselves, right? Because I had money and I was just a horse's ass. And I can tell you, I was pretty repellent to women, right? And once I was broke, and I was like really happy though, because I had my books and I had my peace and quiet and I had my things to do, and I was really happy with what I had. And then I had people in my life, and I met my girlfriend, who was an amazing person. I don't think when I had money, I could have been with that person, and things like that. So in a way, it can, just listing gratitude is being grateful with what you do have. It goes against your programming as a human, which is just to destroy, feed, create, build, destroy, rebuild again, which would be natural in an evolutionary sense, but in a really beautiful way. If you go backward, you can be quite content with very little.
Totally. And I think that the most attractive trait in a person is their state. If someone has a positive state and someone is enjoyable to be around, they're naturally going to be attractive. And, you know, it's not like, oh, I can just wake up and like smile and count my blessings and all is great. That's a great starting place. But the net result of starting from that starting place, noticing what we're grateful for, noticing what makes us happy is, okay, what could I do to bring more of this into my life? And when we look at that and then we start taking the action to bring more of it into our life, we get the health, we get the wealth, we get the love, we get the relationship, we find the cool activities that we like. And suddenly, as you said, you're someone who have mastered yourself and you're enjoyable to be around. So it's like starting from that place of gratitude and happiness gives this motivation and this energy to actually go for the things that might be a little challenging to get, but are so worth getting. And then this momentum starts around it. You know, you get more things that have you feeling grateful, not like big things, but just like simple things or little habits or little interactions. Oh, wasn't it nice that when I smiled at that person, they smiled back at me? Wasn't it nice that when that person looked like they were having a rough day and I gave them 3 minutes of attention, suddenly their whole day turned around, and like, wouldn't it be nice if someone did that for me? And we just start doing more of that. And suddenly it's like the whole world changes, because when we're negative, we kind of draw negativity to us. We're like, oh, the world's a horrible place. But when we shift to the state of positivity, we start drawing positivity to us. And we're like, wow, the world is a beautiful place. And I feel that positive people who really practice it, not just who preach it, but who actually practice it, are empowered people who make the effort to make changes and who pay attention to the little things and the simple things and take care of the essentials. Those are the people who can make shifts, and being around those people leads to a really good quality of experience. And I also liked what you really said about, you know, you've done a lot, you've been a lot of places, you've had a lot of success, you've had a lot of fun, you've had your first place finishes, and you've helped a lot of students along the way. And now, you know, you can continue to do that, but you also get to look back. And I think that's one thing that, you know, if we keep our programming from our early 20s, we think, oh, I have to keep doing more and more and more and keep getting more of these experiences. But part of life is accepting the transition that slowly but surely we're going to slow down a little bit and we're going to be less able to do the other things. But so in doing so, we want to take the time to reflect on the good things that we've done. And we don't need to go out there and do more and more crazy things or wild things. We can do a few of them here and there. But as long as we take the time to reflect on all the good stuff good experiences that we've had on a regular basis, we're like, oh, man, I don't need to go and do 7 more of those because that one time I did it was really good. And every time I reflect back on it, I can reconnect with that feeling. And it's a great feeling. And like one exercise I learned in a personal development program that was super helpful is just list your 10 best moments, your 10 most successful moments in life, whether they were related to career, family, love, whatever. List them and then put them beside your workspace so that anytime you're feeling a little off, you look at that list and you can pick one of the 10 and transport really yourself back there and be like, oh yeah, life's awesome. Yeah. And when you do that, you're like, oh, I wonder what else I could add to that list. And from connecting with them, you re-empower yourself to be like, okay, I might do something even better. And it's just like, like you told me about this, man, like putting the affirmations in your pocket so they're easily accessible to pull them out and be like, all right, I read this sentence and I change my state. And having those tools available is just like, it's impossible to put into words how beneficial being able to change your state at the snap of your fingers is. Because like Tony Robbins says, you change your state, you change your life, and it can happen in a moment when we know how to do it. So I just love these exercises. Like I'm a big self-improvement junkie. I assume you are as well.
Do you find as you get older, like simple things just blow your mind more? Like you change your state, you change your life. Like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I'm still young, but like when I was even younger, if I heard that, it'd be like, yeah, makes sense. But it's true. If you can, tournament poker a lot of times hinges on, can you keep it together right now? Because if you can play mediocre poker through the work, you pretty much, when you're playing from 75 on down to the final table, there is going to be one pot where you lose 50, 60% of your chips, almost always. It's very rare to see someone not go through that. And if that person doesn't go through that, we actually have a special term for that because that's a special situation. We say that person went wire to wire because it's not normal. But you find out if a guy wants it, if he loses those 50% of his chips. And if he goes, I'm pissed off right now, but I'm going to use that energy and I'm going to direct it toward focusing more and taking this opportunity for what it is. And that's really a way to change your state. Whereas if you just go, I can't believe I'm pissed at myself, but I'm so pissed at myself, and you get in that negative feedback loop, you're not changing your state. Now you're at the mercy of your emotions, and you can't. If you want to master No Limit Hold'em, tournament poker, you have to master yourself. And that's a great example of when you can't do it. If you cannot change your state through sheer force of will, or letting go.
Yeah, letting go. I had that exact situation come up in my Fallsview run where I got it all in pre-flop ace king against ace queen for, like a quarter of my chips, reasonably deep on day 2, where it was a significant pot. And it was against one of the better players at the table. And, he hit his 3-outer and doubled up, and old me would have been like, fuck, good players got chips. This is going to be so hard. This is going to suck, right? And I could have had that. Woe is me. That should have been mine. The worst words we could ever use in poker: should have, would have, and could have. But instead, I took the mode of just being like, let's find some positive in. And guys like, sorry, man. I'm like, don't worry, man. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe you're like my guardian angel or something. You're supposed to be here on the table. So, and he's just like, whoa, like, okay, cool. Thanks, man. He ends up chipping up a decent amount. And maybe an hour later, I have kings in the big blind. He's in the small blind. Button opens. He 3-bets. I cold 4-bet in a spot that I'm always going to have it. And he just rips jacks without even thinking about it because, pocket jacks. And I hold. And
I didn't know what he had, so I invested my whole portfolio. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And so I get all my chips back plus interest because he'd been doing work in the meantime. And, was that why I lost the pot to him? No, I lost the pot to him because that's the way that the cards fell and where the chips landed. But by taking that state of mind, I allowed myself to just stay positive, stay focused, not get caught in like a tailspin of emotions. And so when the situation came up, I was able to, do whatever posturing I needed to do to make it look like I'm an aggressive player and this and that. And I got rewards for it. And I find it's not always like one-to-one that it happens like this, but generally when we take the high road in life, at some point in the future, we are rewarded for doing so. And as I've noticed that more and more, it just becomes a no-brainer to just like always take the high road whenever given the option, because it never takes me the wrong direction. Even if nothing direct comes from it, I get to feel better the whole time. And if I can choose feeling good or feeling bad, why would I not choose feeling good?
Well, and it's going back to what we were talking about with games. So something I always remember there, you had a really good way of looking at it. Something that helped me. It's like when you watch a child play a game, like a child can be really intelligent. Because like the child doesn't lose. You think about like a child playing pachinko. Do you know what pachinko is?
No, I know Plinko. I know. I don't know pachinko. Is that the one? Is that like Tiddlywinks?
It's like they put the little ball in the top of the thing, and it like hits a bunch of things on the way down, and then goes in a slot.
Okay.
So essentially, well, if a kid's playing pinball or a kid's playing pachinko, and he can like smack the board around because the pinball machine doesn't have a tilt mechanism, or the pachinko parlor doesn't see the kid playing with it, he has maybe a skill edge which he shouldn't deserve. Now, does that mean he's not playing a pachinko game? He's not playing pinball? Like, there's still weird things that happen. It's like, to me, poker is just like this big cosmic pinball game where, it's going to, the ball is going to take some weird bounces and weird things are going to happen. And that's kind of what's fun about it. And like, you'll see a kid like 5 years old will get that. And as we become adults, we become like so entitled, like, damn it, I got a really good spin on that pinball machine. I deserve it. And it's like, the kid clearly saw the pinball machine for what it was. It's pinball. And it's like, poker's gambling at the end of the day, right? It's a goofy crap supposed to happen. And it sounded like you realized, like, some goofy stuff happened, but who knows why? Maybe something's going to happen later. Maybe another goofy thing will happen that'll help me, which is a way better view for it than, oh my God, everything's going to be over. You cannot look for your redemption in a gambling game. And a lot of people do feel like something, if I win this tournament, it will vindicate me. And if it doesn't, it proves I'm a loser. And it's like, whoa, that's a bad way to look at it, because this is a goofy game and a lot of weird things can happen. It seems like you kind of just saw it for what it was. You saw it like, this is a game. Things happen where I've seen people just lose their mind in that exact situation you're describing.
Yeah, it's because they're just so attached to it and they've turned it into something more than what it is. And I love what you said, that like poker is a skill game, but there's gambling involved. And like, if you want to redeem yourself, go do something great for the world. Go do something that is guaranteed to bring value to someone else's life, and you'll feel better. But, I look at like every tournament, because it's this goofy game too. It's like, it's the start of an adventure. And what a blessing it is to get to partake on the adventure. And if we find riches at the end of the rainbow, fantastic. And if we don't even make it very far along the rainbow, hey, at least we got to go on an adventure. It's like when people go for, I guess this is stuff we learn when we get older, but like when people go for like hikes, is it the end of the world if like they don't see an animal that they were hoping to see? No, because it's great they got to go for a walk. And I think some of this like perfectionist tournament mentality actually, at least in my case, comes from video games. Because back in the day, you could have your video game and you have your season, and if you're about to lose a game, you just reset the system. Because you're like, no, I'm going to have a perfect thing. And it's this technological and internet generation, there's an unrealistic standard placed on things that like things can be perfect because we could just hit the reset button. And it's like, nah, like this is life. There isn't a reset button, but just be grateful that you get to play, even if there's going to be some hardships along the way. The tough stuff is just as fun as the other stuff because it prepares you to get the goods out of the good situations too.
And that's why my friends kind of rag on me like, hey, you're talking about you want to be good at tournament poker. You want to go into tournament poker again. Why do you spend so much time watching baseball or watching soccer or whatever? And it's like, sports are about failure. and accepting failure. Yeah. Baseball players fail 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10 on average. And I love watching baseball because I just love seeing how these men deal with it, right? Like Robinson Cano is just a Zen master. He's like this kid. He's an adult from the Dominican Republic. He plays for the Seattle Mariners. He's always goofing off and smiling, but once he gets up to bat, he's really serious about it. And then right after it's over, he kind of gives like a chagrin look if he strikes out and kind of watches himself on the big screen. He goes, I guess I was off or whatever, and he takes it so easy. And it's like, God, I'm watching an adult. And I like how you said it's an adventure. I love when I play poker, I have no idea what my job is going to entail that day. Every day in tournament poker is completely bizarre to the point where when I go into play tournament poker, I expect to see something really strange every single day. And that carries over to my normal life. I expect to see something strange every single day. Well, today I had something. The internet went down in my building with my roommates, and we had a technician come out, couldn't figure it out. The company couldn't figure it out. I went out there and I found, I looked at the cord really close, and in the router, the thing still had a light on it, but it wasn't plugged in all the way. It does the little light when you have the thing plugged in. And I was like, oh, look how weird that thing is, right? It looks like it's plugged in, but it's not. So the technician probably just looked right at it and thought it was plugged in, but it's not. So I plugged it in and we all had internet. Now, before I started playing poker, I would have been like, that idiot technician, right? How could he not see this? And he just wasted 6 hours of my day. But since I've played so much poker and I realized it's kind of the unpredictability that makes every poker session so fun, you start realizing that's how life is. Like the awkward moments actually create funny conversations. That's why people watch Aziz Ansari's show or all the Seinfeld. Like these really awkward conversations actually lead to some surprising truths, which are illuminating and entertaining. And if you take life with that spirit, I find tournament poker and life is far more enjoyable.
Yeah, and you can carry over the insights you get from those situations to many other parts of your life, obviously. And if we're not willing to get into sticky spots, we're not going to learn. On the topic of, surprises every day, not really knowing what your job is going to be that day, can you tell me about your coaching and why you chose this focus? Because I know you're still playing a bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you're playing a little bit here and there, but you wanted to make your primary focus coaching. And I was kind of curious why you chose that as your focus.
Well, for one, I told people I'm no longer a professional poker player because it always pissed me off when I was in the trenches when some guy would say like, well, I'm a computer programmer by day, but I'm semi-professional because some of my money comes from poker. And I'm like, what does that mean? Or if a professional poker player to me means the vast majority of your income comes from poker. And I don't think it's fair to the kids in the trenches still to say I'm a professional poker player. I don't think it's fair to the guys taking that shot to say I'm a professional poker player. But why I became a coach? Well, one, I found I'm way better at coaching than I am at playing cards. I'm starting to really like my no limit hold'em game, but I find I really enjoy coaching. I seem to get results from my students much to a degree that really satisfies me. Because if I want to do anything, I want to do it well. And look, there's not that many professions that work out for an American white male who rants all the time about motivation and grit. There's just not that many positions that helps, right? And talks in a circular nature. And I think it's a little late for me to be a football coach. So the next best thing is teaching poker. And I really do love it. I really love watching my students succeed. It's a great feeling. And the more I teach, the more I learn. And I kind of get paid to study things, to do the combinatorics on different boards, the mathematics on things. I probably like when I wrote The Myth of Poker Talent, a lot of people say, like, how in the hell did you finish that book? It looked like such an undertaking. If I had the free time, I would have written a research paper like that on No Limit Hold'em just so I could get better. The fact somebody paid me in advance to do it is really nice because now I have a reason to invest this much time in this project. So I really love it because I feel like to half-ass something is actually the harder way to do it. Like if you go into a job and let's say you're I worked at an Arby's when I was younger, okay? And I would show up at Arby's, and there were two ways I could have gone through things. One, could have looked at the clock every 5 minutes, complained about how I had a little nasal drip, didn't want to be there, and oh God, there's another customer in the drive-thru. And it would those days were just torture. And then it occurred to me one day, I really like it when we get slammed with customers because there's no thinking. You're just present in the moment every single second. And before you know it, the shift's over and you're getting paid. And I was saying, like, this is nice, right? This is really cool. And I found when I'm teaching poker, I have to be way more present than when I was playing poker because I'm solving an algebraic chain, watching a hand history while I'm simultaneously talking. There is no put that thought on the back burner. You have to be there at that moment, or that person's going to wonder, why am I paying this guy $150 an hour if you're not there? And it's not like I can go, oh, look at my degree from Poker University in Toronto. I have to, it's all performance-based. If I perform, if they succeed, I get raises, I get to do my job more, I get to do more of what I love. If I fail, I get fired. I love that. I love that pressure. I love being that present. I love it. And you know what's really nice about it is when I go play poker now, I can summon that attention now. I didn't have that gear before. I was always giving it 80%. I didn't have total attention. Now, because of my students and how demanding they are and how many of them are really smart people from other fields, and they're such great BS detectors, dude. Oh my God. Like, I love having my theories challenged by 35, 40 people. And sometimes it'll be a guy, you know, the guy's like, the guy works with like truck drivers. He'll ask you a question. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, that is one of the smartest damn things I've ever heard when it comes to this. And it's like, why haven't we talked about this? And it's like crowdsourcing your game, getting thoughts from all different schools of thought. And I really love that. That gives me a rush that I love what I do. I love waking up every day knowing everything, my success or my failure is under my control. It's about how hard I can push myself. There's no advisory board deciding whether I get to keep my license or not. There's no boss that gets to hire their son over me. There's no government regulatory agency that decides whether I can get a permit or not. It is on me. It is my performance. It is my time. It is my focus. It is my knowledge base. It is my communication style. That is the thrill. I love performing because in the thrill, you learn so much about yourself when you have to summon that performance and you get to become a better version of yourself. And that's intoxicating to me. I can't stress how much I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes you such a great coach and such a great teacher is that you really are so dedicated. This is not some part-time thing for you. This is who you are, what you're about, and you go to great depths to solve things. You'll work with the softwares, you'll work with the calculators, you'll run the numbers. You'll also, if you don't know an answer, you're going to go seek people out so you can do collaboration, so you can pick their brain and add that to your brain and really deepen your understanding. And I kind of want to bring this back to what we talked about earlier, where, you know, you'd worked out before, but when you started working out with a personal trainer, a true professional, everything changed very dramatically. You know, didn't go right away, but by the second month, you're like, holy shit, like this is a totally different experience. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like for people when they've been playing poker, doing well, maybe talking hands with their friends. But what happens when they actually hire a coach, someone like yourself, start taking things more seriously, have more accountability, or really investing in their game, how that kind of just shifts their psyche, way of being, and the results in terms of what you've seen over your career?
Well, there's a canned response for this that sells more, but I'm going to give you my real answer, which is you give them the thrill of the hunt. Because you think about it, half-assing things, going back to half-assing things, half-assing is a way of being in pain, right? You think about it, there's always this thought in the back of your head, which was, I didn't make this happen when I was 22. I didn't make this happen when I was 24. I didn't make this happen when I was 29. I don't know when it's going to happen. If you give up or you half-ass things, and to me, half-assing is the same thing as giving up. In poker, one of the best things for my job security and one of the worst things for good players who aren't great is once in a while a good player just gets smacked with millions of dollars and every other good player says, I can let off the gas because I could become him. I'm as good as him. Yeah, but you want to raise your opportunities. And you can pick one of two stresses. One is the hunt, which is, I don't like waking up at 6 a.m. for a meeting because, like you said, I don't understand something, right? I don't like going back over something I really enjoyed. I liked a theory of mine that I really believed, and then deciding it's not relevant anymore and having to rewrite the whole thing from scratch. That's not fun until you get the thrill of the hunt. Like, I know at some point in the next year, I will be in this situation. And when I look at the other guy across the table, I'm going to know I studied up for this moment and he didn't. And when he's across the table from me, he has no chance because I worked for it. I deserve it. I earned it. And giving them that thrill of the hunt, which is, I start with things like, why do you raise to 2.5x here? It's standard. Well, if I put a gun to your head and I said, prove it to me, could you do it? It's like, whoa, why are you being so intense, man? And it's like, no, you couldn't prove it. You couldn't. Some guy told you to do it and you followed the crowd. I want you knowing why you opened a 2.5x. I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I want you to know why it's right so you can execute it at the right time and you can change it when it's not right. You can go to 2x when it's right, go to 3.5x when it's right. And then I go, no, seriously, I'm asking everybody at home right now, if I said produce a database, produce a card runner ZV calc that proves your 2.5x raise is right in a particular situation, could you do it? Yes or no? For the vast majority of people, the answer is no. And then my next question is, how do you go around acting like you deserve to win something at poker? How do you do that? How entitled are you? You don't even have the opening strategy right. Could you imagine a chess master of any degree, a serious kid? I'm talking like an 11-year-old kid in inner city Harlem in a chess club. You don't think he's had to read a book on openings? How much have you thought about this? And then, once we break them down and they're in tears, me and my friends who coach, but, it's mostly just me now. I don't have as many guys as I used to. It is me. I'll just say that. I don't know why I said we, the royal we, but yeah. Once we start getting them, but here's the thing. I want you to know, nobody else knows why they opened a 2.5x too. Nobody else knows why they 3-bet to this size. Nobody else knows why they 3-bet with this hand and fold this hand. And if you can learn this and you can keep going further into this, you can sit at a table and look at every single person at that table and know you're the best player. And that is hard to beat. You can earn that within yourself. People do this thing like, I hurt your self-esteem, right? Like, how could I hurt your self-esteem? That's something within you or it's not. That's earned within yourself. I have been made fun of walking away from a poker table in 4 different continents, 10, 20 different countries, like people laughing, making fun of me and all that. You know why you can't hurt my self-esteem? Because I studied up on that moment. And I can go, here's my work. Let's see yours. Let's see your analysis, right? Come on, show it to me. Come on, you were laughing, huh? Let's put 1,000 on it. Can you do it? And if you can't do it, you don't have it. You might beat me today. You're not going to beat me this month. And you're not going to beat me this year. And you're not going to beat me over this lifetime. And once you achieve that kind of confidence within the game, it can come to other parts of your life. And I love giving people that confidence. I love when the light bulb comes on in their head. Like, I get this. I get this. I get why people donk bet now. I get why that's a strategy. It felt so weird to lead out before into the raise, but now I get it, and it doesn't feel weird. And I love the look on that guy's face when he's confused and he folds. I love that look. I live for that look. And giving that to other people. And the great thing about poker is you can give it to anyone. Like a 65-year-old retiree, he can't go play basketball. He can't probably go play softball. He can play badass cards, though. Like a grandma, you can give that to her. They don't know what she's 3-betting. I love teaching the elderly because they believe every one of their 3-bets. They can just Hulk smash the final table. You give a kid from an impoverished country, like grew up kind of like a shrimpy kid in Estonia, and it's like, you want to make 50K next year? What do you mean make 50K? 50K, I could teach you how to do it. 50K, I'll own half of Estonia if I make 50K. Let's do it, right? Like that kind of energy, that kind of drive. And the great thing about my job is we're taking the money from other people, hopefully consenting adults that realize they're gambling. I'm not taking money from them. If I teach them well, they spend $200 on a lesson, they make $2,000 off of it, and I get paid $200 off of it. Nobody loses. It's win-win. I'm just sitting there with my friends, creating every day, loving every minute of it. That is the energy I like bringing people to in training.
I love it. That's you're doing the good work here with that. And
thanks, man.
I could just hear the passion and the fire, and that's exactly what got me into teaching, because I don't go into the detail that you do. And anytime someone wants to book me for coaching and they want to work on their technical game, I'm like, no, you want Alex. If you want like some motivation, self-confidence, self-management, envisioning, mental game, yeah, I'm your guy. But if you want technical stuff, definitely talk to Alex, because I know you obsess on this stuff and you break it down to the decimal. So let's talk a little bit about legacy, because I can hear where your passions are. I can hear what drives you, what motivates you. But, if we go 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future, what do you want to be known for in this game? What impact do you want to have had looking back 20, 30 years from now?
Ooh, a good question. Nobody's really asked me that. I haven't asked myself that. Well, I guess if I'm being perfectly honest, I would like to be poker's Phil Jackson. I'd like to be the coach that produced the most talent, had the most profound effect in this era. I would like a lot of players to come up and say, like, yeah, that one concept I'd never heard of before until he introduced it to me, and it changed my game. I would like to. It's a bit narcissistic, I'm not going to lie. I love that there's millions of people working on this game, and I could change the game. Like that is addicting. That is fun. As far as I'd like to have a family. I'd like to be known as a better person than a card player. I'd like it if my word meant something, if you knew what you were getting when you talked to me, and if I was just there for people, if I helped people. Really, what I'd like to think is I don't get contentment out of anything besides service. I don't really get contentment out of anything. Like, I've had a lot of money. I've spent a lot of money on myself, but it doesn't do anything for you at the end of the day. You still got to go to bed and know it's yourself. They do these studies, like what's going to make people happy. people always say the same things like, power is going to make me happy, or like if I was attractive, that would make me happy, or money would make me happy, or being really intelligent will make me happy. And it's, well, when they study those people, they find intelligent people aren't happy because could you imagine just being surrounded by idiots every day? That's probably what it's like for people with a 180 IQ. Everything's just really simple to them, right? I'm not in that. Fortunately, everybody makes perfect sense to me because I'm not as fairly average when it comes to intelligence, in my opinion. But and when it comes to, like, you can ask any attractive woman, does it make you happy to be an attractive woman? And they'll tell you, like, I don't know who's being genuinely kind with me and who wants something from me, right? And it's the same thing with being rich. You don't know who. When I became wealthy, I didn't know who my real friends were because suddenly everybody was my buddy. So I had no one I could trust. And I did trust some people that, caused me some problems. And power. Bill Gates probably has more power than all of us, and he's got the knowledge that he could misuse it at any time. I bet that guy's stressed out of his mind, right? And whereas the only thing that really makes me happy is helping other people. And like, I don't do it for other people. I do it for myself. Makes me feel good about myself. Makes me happy. I did something with my day, right? I like fixing things for people. It's like, hey, that was kind of fun. Or I like helping people because you do get a little bit of you do get something out of it. I don't know what it is, but you just feel better the rest of the day. I like giving somebody an idea that helps them with, well, I'll give you an example. Well, it's not even an example. It's like, if you've ever had a problem with something for a very long time, this is something I love in poker, is if you teach somebody a concept, like you could give them a living. And people always do that. If you could give somebody a fish, they'll eat for a day. If you teach them how to fish, they'll fish for a lifetime. I love that I get to do that. I can teach people, like, if you ever need some money, there's a hold'em game pretty much anywhere on earth. If you can learn these things, you'll find a way to scrape by and live. Like, that's really fun to give to people. And I measure success by, as cheesy as it sounds, like, just helping people makes me happy. And I think there's something very male about that. Men like to be the provider, that we were wired to do that, right? We had to be the provider we had to be the hunter provider in our caveman families, right? So there's something I love about just being ruthless, and like I like to think I'm pretty ruthless when it comes to coaching. Pretty ruthless when I'm at the poker table, and that kind of satisfies like the rah like macho man in me, the testosterone. And then once you get off the table, like having the wherewithal to realize only things that make me happy are, going to basketball games, reading books, spending time with the people I love. So I want to give away this money, right? Like I don't want to give away this money. I want to invest this money in my family. I want to invest, or whatever it is, right? Something that means something. That to me, that it allows you to feel good at the end of the day. Like, man, I am being the person I thought I could be. Like, I get to be the hero in my own little story. And I would like to be, like, in 20, 30 years, I'd like people to say he used his powers for good, like Spider-Man. I want to be Spider-Man, Gripsed. That's what I want to be.
So you want to be Spider-Man? You want to be Phil Jackson by day and Spider-Man by night?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Phil Jackson's not even doing that good of a job. I got to update that analogy. But yeah, it's fun. It would be fun to be known as one of the more prominent coaches to start the game, because I have no doubt in my mind, 100 years. Can you imagine? Here's a thought. What do you think No Limit Hold'em is going to look like in 100 years? It's going to be, it's going to be around. It's been around for 100 years already.
I feel like on the live front, it's not going to be too different. You're going to have your guys who are working very hard to solve the game, and they know it inside out, and they're pretty bulletproof and damn near unbeatable. And you have the other people who are there to have a good time and who are there for entertainment, and they're going to be having a good time, and they're going to be losing the money to the bulletproof individuals. And I think the people who are working hard will be a little bit sharper because they'll know a little more. But the actual like ecosystem of the environment, especially as it's played in casinos as opposed to poker clubs, I think it's going to be pretty similar, man.
Yeah, like, well, that's the thing, because it's analog in a digital world. That's why people love it, right? But I just wonder, like, will there be a professional tour in South Korea? Will there be because this is, the way baseball started is random teams would roam the town and play other teams, and they would play a cash game. That's how baseball started. Yeah. And then, they would pass a hat around at the end to the audience members, and the audience members would throw in like a nickel, a dime, and that was their profit. Like, is poker going to go somewhere like that? Are they going to find a way to like soundproof rooms so people could watch us bluff in real time? And think about it, with cryptocurrency and people just living off the map. Like, how many professional poker players are there going to be in 100 years? How many guys are there going to be living off their wits? And it's really fun to think about that as someone who's really like, get off the grid as fast as you can. The grid is wrong. North American culture will kill you, as we were discussing earlier. Do things for yourself. I love that I could add to this body of knowledge with my blog, my articles, my books, the people I affect, of people who can mobilize themselves and travel the world and make money off the grid and do things for themselves and empower themselves. I love that that's my job. Like, that to me is a calling. And then the money is secondary. And then you just want to do the right things with the money.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned your blog, your articles and everything, and I know there are many of them because I've read a lot of them. But for those who aren't quite so privileged to know about your works, where can they go to find them? And where can they go to, what is the best way to contact you for private sessions?
Write me at alex@pokerheadrush.com if you guys want to reach me about private lessons or just anything, really. I do answer all my own emails. It's not an assistant, but you do have to give me some time to get back to you, because obviously if it's just me, it takes some time. My blog is at pokerheadrush.com, and that's just the fun stuff. That's like book reviews and trip reports and things like that. And on the top right, there's you can sign up for my mailing list, and my mailing list is where I have all the good stuff. That's the podcast, that's the strategy articles, that's the free videos, and you get multiple updates a week with free poker content. You can sign up for that right there. And that's where I put the bulk of my energy when it comes to free content. And in the coming year or two, I'm going to be releasing a lot of my old articles and blogs in the form of ebooks. We'll probably make them next to, my editor and I will make it probably next to nothing. There's no way I'll make money off of it. It'll just be a promotion vehicle. But yeah, I'm going to put that out there. So you can read the same articles that Gripst read.
Yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge there, and much like the Gripst material, it's free or borderline free. And the stuff that does cost money is 100% worth it. This is one of the things I touched on in the beginning that I wanted to mention was my first time going to Lima, one of my first international poker tournaments, actually. I went to play 3 events. I went to play the main event, maybe like a 1K second chance and a $500 turbo. And after the first event, I cashed it, but I wasn't feeling like super confident about my play. I felt like I was a little bit rusty. So I watched the first half of You Flat Too Much. I think so. I watched, 2.5 hours because they're pretty long webinars. And it just got me like really breaking down the game and like thinking about like the fine details. I'm like, okay, like I've got it. I remember like I reconnected with that part of my brain that knew poker. and really analyzed poker and kind of reactivated it. And the next day, I played the $500 turbo, which is the one that I thought was just going to be the best shot for some reason when I looked at the schedule. And I chopped it for like 10 grand.
That's so sick.
And
nice.
Yeah. And the thing was, like, the concepts were essential. There were a couple of new ones. A lot was review because I've studied heaps, but it was the way that you spoke about the game and the kind of level of seriousness that you took to the game that got me being like, yo, like, take this serious. Pay attention to all these things. Notice these little things. Think outside the box. And that was absolutely essential to getting those results. And I've watched pretty much every one of your webinars because, you know, they're long, but you go into such great detail. Like, you just break down the math of every situation. We were talking about the reshove game earlier, and like, you and Ape Styles broke down where you can reshove any two cards or 90% of hands. And when you put the math out there, it makes sense. And what I love about your teaching is you put the visuals there, you put the numbers there, you put a bunch of hand examples to really hammer it home to make sure the student gets it. But you present it in such a way that the brain's like, I understand this. This isn't just words. This isn't just someone rambling. There are pictures there. There are numbers. There are mathematical proofs. This makes sense. And then automatically, when I go to sit at the table after, and I'm sure it'll be the same with anyone who has a good poker mind to begin with, things just make sense to you. And then you have that confidence, and people sense that confidence, and you're like, what does he know that has him sitting like that? I don't know if I want to mess with him. And so on top of the knowledge, you also get the fear factor. And like, I can't recommend your stuff more highly. And even to the point, once on that trip, I told someone like, oh yeah, I'm studying like Assassinato stuff. Like, oh, why are you studying his stuff? Like, he's not like playing on the high roller tour and he doesn't have all these crazy results. And I'm like, because he's the best teacher I've ever experienced. Like, oh, but you could watch Run It Once videos with all these guys with great results. I'm like, yeah, cool. They can't communicate the same way. They don't break it down the same way. And you broke it down in a way that just made so much sense for me, someone who's pretty analytical too. So that's why I just really wanted to get you on here, so I could really like let people know, like, this is someone worth listening to. And the price at which you offer your webinars, it's a steal. And I know it's because you just want people to get this information so that they can get the results. So you start getting those emails being like, Alex, thank you so much. Alex, you changed my life. Alex, you got me the score.
To be fair, I like the money too. You know, my family likes Christmas presents too. But yes, I do try. And, you know, in all honesty, I do try to keep it affordable, because I ran away from home in high school, and I was living in a garage with no heating or plumbing when I started playing cards. And I always put out a ton of free stuff because I always try to remember that kid. And it's like, God, it would have been so cool when I was that kid, you know, just if there was free things. Like, there was no YouTube back then, right? Like, so it was, I do like to put it out there. And then if you want to pay something, I want it to be something affordable, so it's accessible to normal people. So yeah, I do get those emails. That is true. And yeah, something I do want to clarify with guys, I have never said I'm a great poker player. Like, when it comes to, like, we'll use soccer as the analogy here, right? Because soccer is the worldwide game. I would be an MLS player. I wouldn't be Premier League. Right? I wouldn't be in Europe. I'd be making a good salary. I'd be solid. You could depend on me. But I really know my craft, really works hard, gets in there. But I admit I have a long way to go. But when it comes to teaching, I think it's easier actually to communicate as that person, because all of these things are things I struggled with quite a bit. And then I found the one way I taught myself that it made sense, and I can teach you that way too. And it is really fun to share that. And I really appreciate you saying those kind words. And I'm really happy you got that 10K. That is sick.
Yeah, I mean, and dude, the 10K was just the beginning, because in fall of 2015, I went to a spin and go boot camp. So I learned my GTO. And then when I came home, I was reviewing your material pretty much every week. And I just went on a heater. I just started final tabling Sunday majors every week. I didn't win, but I got a lot of final tables and finishes. And one of my best students, Ali Msirovic, he'd just be like, dude, you're playing sick. And I'm like, well, I've been watching the material. He's like, I can tell you're making a lot of sick moves. And I'm someone who doesn't have tons of confidence in my play. Someone's like, yeah, I'm playing okay. He's like, no, like, dude, like you're playing sick. I'm like, okay, well, I've had a lot of practice and I have a good teacher. And then the momentum of that is what led to my supersonic score, the second place finish, and then the Falls View win a week after. So it's like the 10K was just the beginning of being like, yeah, watching Alex's material is really going to help me. And it led to, with the assistance of your teaching, I probably made an extra $250,000 that I wouldn't have made without them. Yeah.
I'm really bad with compliments. I will accept that you would think I had any part of that. Thank you very much for crediting me in any way. I'm really happy you made that money. I'm really glad you're doing it, man. Yeah. And really glad we got to talk today. Yeah. This was fun. Where did the time go?
Yeah, dude, it just flies. And I think that if you knew now, if you knew now what you know now when you were 20, you probably would be that guy who could be in Premier League instead of MLS. But you spent all the time learning, you spent all the time studying, so that, at 30, things are a little bit different. But because you can impart that to people who are 20, who do have the hunger, it's when you get that combination, like those are the guys who can play in the Premier League. And sweet that we get to watch them. I find the same with my coaching. Like they're guys who are like doing way better than I've ever done. But, it's partially because of what we passed down.
Mm-hmm. The fact that you take pleasure in that shows you're a good coach, because you have to, some people get jealous. I know other coaches who get jealous. And you hear some other coaches, quote unquote, always want to level with me, which means like crap talk their students. And that's always like, wow, dude. It's like, imagine just some guy went, would you like dinner with your girlfriend tonight? I'll buy that for you. Would you like a new blanket for your bed? I'll buy that for you. And you just badmouth that guy, right? That's essentially what you do to me when you're badmouthing your students. That's what I hear, right? If you can't teach them, if they're not getting it, that's a failure on your part, usually, right? But and the other thing I wanted to say, you can play poker when you're 82 years old. I'm not done yet. I might be Premier League in 5 years. That's the great thing about this game. It's a lifelong thing. Yeah. And you can take your time to figure out your life. Any young guys listening to this, finish school. It'll teach you about how to be a card player. You can do it on the side if you have a job you enjoy. You don't have to play with a gun to your head like I did when I was 18. Like, screw this, I'm going to learn how to be a pro, right? You can do it with those other things if you learn from your life. It is a lifelong thing, and that's the fun part about it.
Yeah, I think part-time is definitely the way to go. Like, heavy part-time, but have that security, because it's a lot easier when you have security to take chances and take risks and do something that might make you look stupid, because it doesn't mean you won't eat for the next week. And there's no shame in that. You don't have to be all in to be like a legitimate poker player. You just have to take your work seriously and take your practice seriously, and you get results. If I can ask you one more question before we part ways.
Yes, sir.
Is there one big thing that you would like to add to your career resume over the years that would make you feel more complete? Is there one thing that, you're really aspiring to notch or to check off?
If you're nothing without this, you're going to be nothing with it. So it wouldn't make me feel more complete, but I want a WPT championship, a WSOP championship. I want a championship. I want hardware. I want to sit there. I want that moment when they deal the final card, and because my brain works so glacially slow, it's probably going to take me 2 seconds longer than everybody to realize I won. And then I want to do the Tiger Woods fist pump. I want to sit there. I want the socially acceptable time to scream like a damn banshee and look at that and go, and knowing I conquered it. I want that. I want that feeling. It has nothing to do with the money. It's just, I just want to be, I want to win that last hand. That's it. That last hand, I want that. That really is the feeling you don't get from cash games. I played cash for a while. I made good money. I didn't get that. I didn't get the you play the game to win, as some coach said, right? But you do. I just want to. Just for the hell of it. Like, the money is almost secondary. Something you were saying. You want to be a much deadlier card player. Do it part time. You do, because when I play now, I've got nothing to lose. When I go, do you think that doesn't help me deep down the stretch versus the guy who dropped out of college and has to convince his parents that them wasting $30,000 on his first couple years of college he's never completed was okay now that he's 25 years old and he's never had a result? You don't think I have an edge on that guy? You have to have you will have a huge edge as a part-time player, because a lot of you guys, especially you guys professionals from other fields, if you bust, you go home to your nice life, a nice house, your nice spouse, your nice little doggy, you know, that's a huge edge. And yeah, and now I'm just having a lot of fun playing. I just want to win, man. I want and that's really a big shift, because before this was my job, and I didn't really think a lot about winning. I thought about playing the best I could. Now I want it. I want to win. I want championships. I want to take the trophies and walk into my gym and like hang it up there and go, brought it home for us, boys. And that be that.
I love it, man. And with the way you speak about it, I think it's an inevitability. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Because you're always doing the work, and you're going to put yourself in more and more opportunities to actually see it through. And I just like you said, you have all these years to play, and you're so sharp, and you're only going to be getting sharper. I don't see a world where it doesn't finish with Alex Fitzgerald having a poker championship attached to his name.
Not trying to crap on your point, but I'm about to. But, you know, knock on wood for what you just said. But it's like, I could be hit by a bus tonight walking to the restaurant, right? And it sounds like a very depressing thought, but you really do, like, you got to, going back to that Seneca thing, you got to be prepared to die tomorrow. Like, I've already won the game. I love my life. I have a great life. I'm in good health. I got great people around me. I've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people. Love my job. In my view, I've already won. So it's okay if it doesn't happen. But once you're in that space where it doesn't matter, if you win the championship, you're a complete person without the championship. Now you're the most poised to get the championship. And I love just being in that spot. And I really appreciate your kind words, man. I thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. It's been an absolute delight. I've learned so much. I can't wait to listen to the playback and listen to the highlights. So if anyone wants to reach Alex, you can get him at The Assassinato on Twitter, or visit his website, pokerheadrush.com, for tons of free material, great premium material, and that is the best place to find him for coaching as well. Wow. It's just been such a delight. I really can't express how much gratitude I have for you coming on here, for sharing all your wisdom, all your life experience. I think a lot of people are going to benefit a lot from this podcast. And for anyone who's listening, who knows someone who could benefit from hearing the conversation Alex and I had today, please share this episode with them. And when you're done with that, you know what to do.
Take what you learned, get out there, and get stacking.
My man. My fucking man. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our sponsor, Gripst Poker Training, and sign up for a free training bundle at www.gripst.com/free. That's www.gripsed.com/free. Get a training guide and an advanced webinar of your choice, up to 10 hours of training material, and over $150 in value, yours absolutely free. Full details are available at grips.com/free. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for supporting the show. And when you've got that new training material, plus all your notes from this show here, you know what to do.